a world of myriad spider nests. It is a small secret world under the control of the Liju Federation. It consists of 7 large urban bases, each of which is a kind of root of the human race. Balin is one of the largest cities in this world. The prices for land here are simply cosmic. However, in the very center of this city there is a private villa surrounded by huge mountains and rivers. At that time, the residence of the caretaker of the city, looking at his reflection in the mirror, he notices that even if more than 10 years have passed, he is still too attractive. Bai Jian is the grandson of the Balin city caretaker. Standing at the mirror in the bathtub, he notices that he still can't get used to this reflection in the mirror. In fact, Bai Jai is a time traveler. In his previous life, he was a soldier who died on a mission. Then I came to this world with all these spiritual animals and their owners. Not that Bai Jai thought he was traveling in time. He thinks it's more like some kind of reincarnation. The guy thinks that, apart from memories of his past life, he is no different from the locals. When Bai Jai finishes packing, a red-eyed silver-plated gold-level fish comes to him. She is the spiritual pet of his father, the strongest man in this world. The fish calls him down and says that breakfast is ready. He goes downstairs and sees that his mother, father, sister, and grandfather are sitting in front of a freshly cooked breakfast. He immediately greets everyone individually and sits down at the table. His disgruntled father tells Zio that his speed is too slow and that nothing is more important to men than speed. He also says that soon he will have 5 seconds for general fees. Zio is at first a little surprised by the severity of his current father, but quickly understands him and immediately replies that he understood him. Next, he asks his grandfather about when he arrived. His grandfather, Bai Jingchun, is the caretaker of Balin City himself. He replies to his grandson that today he will have an annual awakening ritual. The man says that as the caretaker of the city, he should make an encouraging speech to the students. His grandfather also tells Zio that he is taking the exam this year and that therefore he will also take part in the ceremony today. Grandpa clearly likes this idea. Zio answers him in the affirmative. The awakening ceremony. Aka, the annual awakening ceremony of the spiritual beast of the Liju Federation. Every year at this time, the Federation holds a wake-up ceremony to help young people and students. If everything goes well, then you can get into the Academy of Animal Tamers to learn more about them. If the awakening fails, only ordinary schools will open the door in front of you. This is one of the most important moments in every person's life, somewhat similar to the college entrance exams in Zio's past life. After admission, you will have a bright future, various classes, and improving your skill level. It's okay if a person fails the exam. He will just live the life of an ordinary person. Zio thinks it's just a lie to console himself, since this is the world of the Beast Lords. Without this talent, it doesn't matter how powerful and rich your family is. Others will look down on you. The talent of controlling beasts determines a person's status in this world. Without it, even an ant won't talk to you. Previously, Zio was only worried that the god of time travel was too generous to him, giving him strength, money, and an attractive face. The guy thinks that if his face gets hurt, a lot of young girls will shed bitter tears. Fortunately, a month ago, he had awakened his talent for conquering a rank beasts. And this talent is intuition, spiritual talent of a rank. Thanks to a good intuition, a person will be able to receive special premonitions, as well as better understand the thoughts of spiritual beasts. This is a great talent for a beast tamer. Its range of use is quite extensive. Blogorodaria, he can control good and evil during the battle. It also helps to simply communicate with animals, which helps in taming them. Zio comes to the conclusion that the ceremony will not affect him in any way, because he is out of the risk zone. However, his grandfather thinks exactly the opposite. A man thinks that intuition is a good talent. However, he does not guarantee that the awakening will go smoothly. He knows that Zio is the one whose development is tirelessly watched by the most influential of the families. The old man understands that in the future the young man will be capable of what he cannot do. He thinks that the young mind lacks stability, and that if he gets to the very place, the monsters will just bite him. A man understands that it's worth flunking him before his abilities become more stable. Bai Jingchun warns his grandson and tells him not to underestimate the awakening ceremony. He proclaims that the awakening godstone is a treasure of the highest level and that there is only one copy of it in the entire Federation. The man also reports that this stone has a special origin. At the beginning of a new era, ferocious monsters came to this world, who put the human race on the brink of survival, practically exterminating it. It was then that the ancestors of all mankind discovered the awakening stone. And then the first generation of beast lords awakened their talents. People survived by discovering the era of spiritual beasts. Thanks to the awakening stone, they managed to resist a kind of ruthless monsters. We can even say that this stone is the cornerstone of civilization, which looks after the animals and us. Beginners who want to become masters of beasts must go through 3 stages. They need to awaken talent, build space, and tame the first beast. Also, in addition, there are young talents, people from aristocratic families or special clans. However, even they are required to take part in the annual ritual of enlightenment. The goal is to use the power of the stone to build a space for the beast. All this is reported by Zioen's grandfather and also warns him about the importance of the awakening stone. At this moment, a question warms the young man. The guy asks his grandfather if in this case the Federation should not be against such a system and the purpose of using the awakening stone. Zioen's father holds his breath for a moment, and the next second his grandfather bursts into laughter. The man replies that the Federation is well aware of all this and just turns a blind eye to this. He gets up from his seat and informs that the newcomers who took part in the ceremony are required to register in the Hall of Awakening. Baijing says that after registration they are entered into the Unified Register of Masters, after which the energy for awakening will be spent much easier. He approaches Zioen and puts his hand on his shoulder, betraying the importance of his subsequent words. He proclaims that the power of the stone is very great and that it will greatly help him in the near future. Zioen replies to him that he knows and understands this perfectly. He informs his grandfather that this is why he treats the ceremony with all seriousness. The young man proclaims that he has been studying the management of animals and the awakening of talents for quite a long time. However, he says that he doesn't know much information about the stone. The guy is surprised to say that a single stone supports the fortune of millions of Federation members. Zioen enthusiastically proclaims that this phenomenon is extremely incredible for its kind. At this moment, his father gets up from the table and shouts to Zioen that real men do not waste time on empty thoughts. He proclaims that Zioen's primary task is to build a space for the beast. A little scared, the guy answers in the affirmative. Noticing his father's rude tone, Zioen's mother irritably tells her father that he is pushing everything too hard. From such a remark, the man is a little embarrassed and looks away. He replies to his wife that he is simply placing accents in this way and not that he is not forcing anything at all. At this moment, in order to dilute the situation, grandfather Zioen starts laughing and pats his grandson and son on the heads. All family members start laughing and then continue their morning meal. After breakfast, Zioen goes to the Awakening Square. When Zioen gets out of the car, his grandfather tells Tom to go to the Awakening Hall. Grandfather himself proclaims that he will prepare his speech for now. The young man gets out of the car and sees a huge crowd in the Awakening Square. The guy sees one student waving a red flag and invites applicants of the Balin academies to her side. Next to her, a crowd of applicants who apply to study at elite academies is lined up. The student notices such a famous grandson of the caretaker of the city and, seeing him, immediately goes to him. She greets him. Further on, more and more female students gather around Zioen in droves and begin a lively conversation. The guy is gradually beginning to be surrounded by ardent fans. They proclaim that they have not seen young Master Bai for so long, and yet they say that he remains just as beautiful. The affiliated college of Balin City is the most advanced in the city. Therefore, most of the students of this college are descendants of high-ranking officials of the city. Of course, being the grandson of the caretaker of the city, Baijing is at the very top of this chain. So to speak, a dandy of the highest class. That's why the students treat him so kindly. Suddenly, a healthy boy comes out from under the crowd, blocking people in his path. He rushes to Baijing with open arms and almost hugs him when they meet. However, Zioen shields herself from his embrace and looks indignantly at the overweight guy. Meanwhile, through tears, he proclaims that Anya's brother has been missing for a whole month and that's why he missed him. Baijing even more contorts his face with indignation and now finally does not understand what the guy standing in front of him is talking about. He asks the guy if he could stop talking to him in such a grumpy tone. Baijing also says that if anyone sees this, they might think that the two of them are having an affair. The chubby guy looks dumbfounded at Zioen and asks him about how he can say such things. Zioen proclaims that Puffy Yun really does not live up to his nickname Yun Potion. Zioen recalls that at first he thought Yun-chan was destined to become a hero because of this, but as time went on, his body became more and more rounded, which is why everyone gave up on it. The guy thinks that remembering the past is quite difficult. You can't bring his youth back that way. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Zioen calls a female voice. She proclaims that the guy was not at school for a whole month, that she thought that he was already scared. The young lady makes a condition for Baijing that if he obediently admits defeat, she will let him go. Meet Fen Kaiyan Yu, daughter of Feng Yanyan, deputy director of Balin Castle. Looking up, Baijing remembers the girl. He also remembers that she offered Zioen a bet a month ago. According to its terms, whoever gets the best talent at the awakening ceremony will win, and the loser will have to fulfill the winner's wish. The young man responds to the girl's exclamations by saying that she started it all herself. Baijing also proclaims that perhaps he is afraid of appearing too arrogant. However, he immediately says that the girl will lose. Then Fen Kaiyan repeatedly asks the guy if he is ready to fulfill the bet. The young man does not refuse. Baijing says that he is waiting and will not wait for the moment when she will fulfill his wish. He calls her a phoenix baby, which makes the fire of the competition flare up even more. The guy confidently warns Fen Kaiyan not to cry later. At this moment, the young man thinks that he has a 90% chance that he will win this argument. He thinks that in all the same, even in the entire Kyushu Federation, level 5 talents are a real rarity. This is not to mention that the Spider Lair is a secret world under the protection of the Kyushu Federation. At this time, the girl realizes that Bai Jian called her an annoying nickname for her. Because of this, Fen Qian becomes furious and furiously tells Tom not to call her that. But Zion feels like everything is smooth. He's just walking away from her, and the students standing next to her gradually calm down Fen Qian. Unable to stand it, the girl exclaims after Bai Jian that sooner or later he will definitely bow down before her. Bai Jian is followed by his chubby friend. Along the way, he tells Bai Jian that he should be careful since this time Fen Qian Yu has his own supplier. Puffy Yuan also says that his father told him that the Feng family had received a special treasure that helps them to awaken their talents. Hearing this, Bai Jian replies that in this case it is not surprising that baby Phoenix is so confident in herself. However, the young man says that he is not surprised at all. After all, the Feng family has a special origin and a solid foundation. Therefore, Bai Jian believes that it is quite natural that they have unique methods. Nevertheless, Bai Jian is confident that Fen Qian Yu will not cause him any extra problems because his intuition did not feel anything strange from her. After talking for a while, they go to the Awakening Square where a speech is about to be delivered. Bai Jingchun welcomes all the students who came from different schools. The man introduces himself to the whole crowd and proclaims that he is the Lord of Balan City. He says that even as a lord, it is a great honor for him to welcome their young talents, brimming with energy and possessing limitless potential. Bai Jingchun warns that the awakening ritual is only one step on a person's life path. He says that regardless of the results of their awakening, that is, the students, should continue to live a normal life and work for the common good. At the end of his speech, he says that he hopes that they will all be able to wake up. The man wishes the crowd of students good luck. After that, the square is filled with ardent applause. Then all the students are called to the Hall of Awakening, and the candidates are ordered to go to the hall in groups and in order. Puffy Yuan and Bai Jian enter the hall and start looking for their seats. The counselors at the entrance asks all students to find their seats and sit cross-legged, and then start awakening their talent. There is a huge emerald-colored stone in the middle of the hall, and all the candidates for awakening talent are sitting next to it in a rounded shape. Having found his seat, Bai Jian also sits down and crosses his legs. After the Kyushu Federation activates the Divine Awakening Stone using the spatial projection method, they will project the power of the Awakening Stone into the awakening halls in various regions, which is a real miracle. All applicants begin to sit down in their seats, and then begin the process of awakening talent. Bai Jian does the same. Crossing his legs, he sits down and clenching two fists, puts them opposite. Thus, he gets, so to speak, the pose of a monk. Bai Jian begins the process of awakening talent. A blue spiritual aura ignites through his body and begins to cover his entire body. Suddenly, Bai Jian feels that the tide of awakening is getting stronger and stronger. He understands that the energy of awakening is out of his control. The guy gets incredibly hurt. The energy literally flows into his body. It flows directly to his head. Suddenly, Bai Jian remembers that the brain is one of the most important organs and that if the energy of awakening damages it, he can become a complete fool. He comes to the conclusion that he needs to protect him immediately. But suddenly there comes a voice that exclaims that maybe everything is not as bad as he thinks. Bai Jian still decides to trust her and decides not to do anything against her. From under the crowded Hall of Awakening, caretakers and supervisors begin to notice that something other than the awakening process is happening in one corner of the hall. Like fireworks, lights begin to light up in this place. The supervisors begin to search for the data of the examining and see that it is none other than the grandson of the Lord. The staff of the Awakening Hall begins to panic. Then the chief of them orders another employee to quickly report this to the Lord of the city, because in this case they could not allow something to happen to the grandson of the city. One of the controllers calls the gentleman, and he immediately comes. Bai Jian immediately asks the audience about why no one told him that his grandson has problems with the awakening process. Then one of the staff announces that a certain image has appeared over Bai Jian's head. Immediately, a noise rises because of the huge image seen right above Bai's head. None of the staff understands what is happening in this place. Seeing the image, the old man exclaims that it is a vision of talent. This special phenomenon can only occur when a person's talent has reached level 5 or higher. The man does not understand how this happened in the case of his grandson, since he has just awakened the talent to control animals. Then he wonders if it could be that Zion's intuition has mutated and reached the 5th level. In the world of royal beasts, there are sometimes beasts that can mutate. Being one of the representatives of the living beings of this world, man also has the ability to mutate. The human mutation is a kind of talent of the royal beasts. The number of animal tamers possessing mutation can be counted with the fingers of 2 hands. Every person with mutated talent is a real celebrity or legendary figure. And if in the case of the process of awakening Zion's talent, his talent mutates, then the process will be extremely dangerous. Realizing this, the Lord begins to worry about his grandson. He asks the chief controller, Mr. Wu, to let him enter the awakening hall. Mr. Wu, meanwhile, tells Tom not to embarrass him, because the Hall of Awakening is under the direct control of the Kyushu Federation. As the Lord of Balan City, a man is forbidden to enter the Hall of Awakening. The gentleman begins to calm Bai Jingchun and tells him not to worry, since the Kyushu Federation has a high-quality defense mechanism. He assures me that his grandson will be fine. Mr. Wu proclaims that the young talents of this world have no comparison, and also says that he is very lucky with his grandson. However, his exclamations do not console the man in any way. At this time, a completely different thinking process is going on in Bai Jian's head. The energy of the awakening stone is still entering his head, which makes the guy's head start to hurt a lot. Suddenly, the place where the grandson of the lord of the city is sitting explodes. There are three things between heaven and earth: divine knowledge, earth knowledge, and human knowledge. Wu Bai Jai, Anya gets out of control of the last element, which leads him to. Finally, the long-awaited awakening process ends and all applicants begin to get up from their seats. Gradually, the awakening stone begins to threaten and loses its former ardent light, which illuminated the dark hall of awakening. Everything ends in an instant and the lights are turned on. Bai Jian also gets up from his seat, and at the same moment he finds it amazing that heaven knows. The earth also knows what he knows. He finds it something very crazy. Opening his eyes, he then sees that he has formed a mythical talent, called the Eye of the Apocalypse. This is a mythical-level mystical talent. Intuition and the ability to predict, the ability to see celestial signs and be a kind of center of everything that happens. There are 9 levels of talent in this world. Among them, F, E, D, C, B, A, S, 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 S. SSS rank talents correspond to the Supreme Lord of Beasts. Bai Jian comes to the conclusion that a talent of mythical origin is something in the spirit of unheard of. He wonders if it could be that his talent is subject to a talent above SSS rank. The guy wonders if it could be that he is simply being played to deceive. He looks at his mystical talent, and then he looks up at the crowded hall, in which people one by one begin to go out. But the guy notices one oddity. He notices over the heads of people from the acquired skills and abilities that they have just appeared. For example, one girl in the hall has a wind spirit talent, which is an elementary talent of a rank. The ability to use wind power to enhance the skill of wind element pets. And one guy has a powerful talent at all, which enhances the talent of D rank, or rather the talent of pets. At one point, the realization comes to Bai Jian's head that this is the effect of the Eye of the Apocalypse. The young man is dying on the spot and does not believe his eyes. The guy understands that according to this characteristic of the Eye of the Apocalypse, nothing in the neighborhood is able to hide from his eyes. This means that presumably before the battle, Bai Jian can learn the opponent's management talent, the abilities of his pet, strengths and weaknesses, and even spiritual strength before the battle. Bai Jian comes to a very important point in his head relating to his newly acquired ability. This means that this time his chances of winning the upcoming fights will increase incredibly. The guy starts laughing maliciously and anticipating victory. He makes a serious face and then walks around the hall. He looks at the talents that other candidates have awakened. He notices the talents of C, D rank in many candidates and considers this a very good result. But he notices talents of a rank in some of the candidates and believes that they are probably subject to local prodigies. Suddenly, he remembers the awakening stone and looking up comes to the conclusion that he needs to crank his ability with the awakening stone. Looking up, the guy sees something very strange, or rather, that the awakening stone is a spiritual beast. As spiritual beast, there was also some information about Bai Jian's newly acquired skill. His talent is a life leap, and his status is the smallest deity. Abilities: awakening of talent, absorption of vitality and resurrection. Features: the seed of the ancient tree of life, with the talent of life leap, can contribute to biological progress. There was also information about the awakening stone. His race: ancient tree of life, talent, life leap, and status also belongs to a minor deity. After learning that the stone is a legendary beast of the divine level, Bai Jian is thrilled on the spot. But then, having decided to pull himself together, he again makes a serious face and continues his guesses and his thoughts. The guy thinks that the stone helps countless animals to awaken their talents and become the creators of a prosperous era. Bai Jian also can't believe that he has discovered that the legendary god awakening stone, which is the cornerstone of the Federation, is actually a disguised divine-level beast. At this moment, one of the supervisors calls all the students to line up according to their numbers and register their awakening rank. Bai Jian stands up without hesitation, and the cue to continue his thoughts and arguments is already there. He wonders if the leadership of the Federation knows about this. He thinks that if they know, then he will be fine, and if not. However, the guy remembers that it's not for nothing that they treat this stone as the most valuable treasure. At this time, information about what a person means, this or that color, is expressed on a plate with ranks. White is a normal skill. Green is a basic skill, blue is an intermediate skill, pink is an advanced skill, orange is a higher skill, and the largest gold is a divine skill. Standing in line, Bai Jian, looking at the scoreboard, suggests that there is a chance of awakening several SS rank talents, maybe a few more orange talents. And looking up, he sees his talent, which is subject to the golden color. The young man thinks that this will be a real shock for the Federation, but still gets in line. He calmly gets in line and sees how other students determine their ranks. Bai Jian turns around and looks at the stone, thinking that this world is not as simple as he imagined. When the turn comes to the guy, he is asked to put his hand on the device that determines the rank. Bai Jian remembers his skills and comes to the conclusion that everything is no longer important and that all these puzzles are not in his competence. He thinks that when his strength reaches a certain level, the secrets of this world will reveal themselves to him. The young man puts his hand on the device and then the controller starts punching information about it in his computer. Testing of his rank begins and Bai Jian realizes that the path of genius awaits him, which shocks the blogging public. Anticipating future glory, he is already bending the whole world to his feet in his thoughts. But when they announce to him that his awakened talent is just intuition and that this skill is subject to a rank, the guy is amazed and does not understand how this happened to him. But in the very next second, the device that distributes the ranks reproduces an error in its work. The device starts beeping and proclaims that the rank of Bai Jian cannot be identified. This makes the guy even more surprised and petrified on the spot. Other personnel begin to approach the device in order to find out what is happening here. The young man does not understand more and more what is happening here. But suddenly Mr. Wu comes out of nowhere. He warns everyone that this device is only capable of identifying talents below S rank. He also reports that it has been a long time since someone in the city awakened talent of such a high level. Mr. Wu Lao proclaims that the talent born in the process of awakening, besides being associated with the talent of a rank intuition as a young man, must be a talent of S rank super intuition. Mr. Wu Lao makes such an assumption and asks the controllers to write it down in the registration stoics. They listen to him without hindrance. Finally, Mr. Wu Lao proclaims that talent of this rank is quite rare and that this child has a bright future. The controller informs Bai Jian that he is now a first-class student at Balin College and that his awakened spiritual talent is an S-rank superintendent. After hearing this, many applicants notice that the legend of the future is on a par with them. One by one they begin to stick to him. One of them proclaims that Bai Jian has a legendary talent of high rank and that this is quite surprising for such a young man. Others say that his grandfather is a diamond-level beast lord, and Bai Jian himself awakened a high-level talent at such an age. They exclaim as one that he is a worthy son of his parents. But he himself is not happy about this, because he understands that his real talent is also mythical. However, the young man still makes a calm and joyful face so as not to make this case public in a public place. The crowd exclaims that when he grows up, he will necessarily become a great master. And at this moment, people surrounding Bai Jian remind him not to forget about them when he becomes successful and strong. Some even say that they knew from the very beginning that a great future awaits him. This does not particularly upset Bai Jian. On the contrary, he likes the fact that they pay more attention to him, albeit because of his high abilities, and not because they previously communicated well. And at this moment, unable to stand it, the controller standing opposite asks them not to delay the queue and step aside so that Bai Jian goes to the exit. Everyone instantly falls into place, and Bai Jian leaves. When he leaves, he thinks that everyone is somehow excited, that somehow he is not even used to it. The young man thinks that this is amazing. Namely, that his talent is outside the range of the talent assessment device, since it was a certification tool of the Federation. Tens of thousands of candidates have been tested with it, and this has never happened. The guy finds it very strange. As soon as he comes out, his grandfather immediately comes to meet him. Immediately, the man asks the guy about how his awakening process went and whether there was anything unusual. Bai Jian asks him back about when he came. Bai Jingchun doesn't say anything. Then Bai Jian replies that everything went relatively well for him. However, he still says that there is something he regrets. The young man apologizes to his grandfather with a guilty look and informs him of his regrets. Bai Jian says he didn't have time to take advantage of the opportunity to build a space for the beast. To this, in response, his grandfather puts his hand on his shoulder and proclaims that what he just said does not matter since he changed the A rank to the S rank. The man says that his merit is most important. He also says that with their resources, they will quickly help Bai Jian to build a space for the beast. Just as Bai Jian opens his mouth to tell his grandfather that he has actually acquired another ability, an inner voice tells him not to say anything. The guy immediately stops and decides to listen to the voice. This is a warning function of his Eye of the Apocalypse talent. Instead, Bai Jian informs his grandfather that he wants to start learning his talent from Into. The man replies to his grandson that in this case they will come to a place where no one will bother them. They walk out together. But Bai Jian slows down his steps. The young man comes to the conclusion that he cannot tell even his family members about his mythical talent, and that from now on he should be more careful with the words that fly out of his mouth. To begin with, the guy decides to conduct a couple of experiments, the first stage of which is exploration. Bai Jian and Bai Jingchun begin to gradually leave the Hall of Awakening. When they come out, Bai Jian looks at the enemy intelligence beast and his ability allows him to see the beast's abilities as well. He sees that this beast is a fire dog. The young man remembers that his detection range is about 10 meters. He realizes that no treasure will escape his eyes and abilities. Looking closely at the awakening square, he notices people with many talents. He marvels at his ability to see everything. After taking a closer look, he notices that he can detect human artifacts. The young man thinks that when his strength increases, the possibility of research will also expand. He comes to the conclusion that later it will be possible to make the visibility range cover the whole world. From the realization of such power, Bai Jian begins to rejoice and realizes that if his abilities increase further, he will become a legendary all-seeing god. Bai Jian and Bai Jingchun are just starting to leave the Hall of Awakening when there is a rumble from the back of the building. Looking up, suddenly in front of them they see a blazing red fire that engulfed all the buildings of the tower. Seeing this, Bai Jian immediately remembers the phoenix. His grandfather instantly proclaims that this is the cry of the phoenix, or more precisely, the flame of the phoenix. The man explains that this is a talent of the S-rank phoenix flame of the Feng family and that they are also lucky to have an heir. Then Bai Jian remembers that he originally planned to show off in front of Fen Kai and Yu and look at her shocked face. But after hearing this, he realizes that they are both S-rank holders and that in this case they both remain in a draw. The young man is very upset by this news. Bai Jian proclaims that if that's all, then he will go home. However, his grandfather stops him and calls his two twins, assistants, whose names are Bai Zhai and Bai Xiao. He tells Bai Jian that if he has awakened an S-rank talent, then he will definitely find someone who holds a grudge against him, and that from now on he will constantly pursue him. The man says that therefore he should not act alone and rely on security. The first is Bai Zhai. She informs that she is the mistress of the golden rank beasts. Behind her comes Bai Xiao. She also says that she is a representative of the golden rank beasts. At this moment, Bai Jian comes to the conclusion that his grandfather really prepared well for his awakening. And then Bai Jingchun hands the guy the key to the treasury. He tells the young man that after he returns, he needs to use the Limbai stone to build a space for the beast. Bai Jian's eyes light up and he picks up the treasured key made of precious material. Then he thanks his grandfather. Limbi stone contains special powers that give advantages when building a space for animals. Only the Beast Lord can resort to using this stone to break through a new level. The price of one such stone is at least 1 million Federation coins. Nevertheless, the stone is considered priceless. After the Hall of Awakening, Bai Jian goes to his family's vault and orders Bai Zhai and Bai Xiao to stay outside and also guard his chambers. The guy is obeyed, and he himself begins to enter the vault. First, he substitutes the key to the door and the key is confirmed, as well as identification with early eye and blood data. Finally, the cherished door opens and the young man enters the vault. In this place, all the savings of the Bai family for many hundreds of years are located. What is stored here has hardly caught the eye of anyone in the outside world. For example, the ghost spider core appeared at an auction 5 years ago. The most influential families fought hard for the lot. In the end, the Feng family made 150 million from his sales. Opening various boxes, Bai Jian finally finds the one he needs. He finds the Linbi stone that was in the box of the far drawer. This box is estimated at 300 yuan, which in translation into the currency of the Federation amounts to 300 million. And there are more than 10 such boxes in this place, so the amount comes out of this very solid. Realizing this, Bai Jian's eyes light up, and he realizes how rich his family is. The strength of a space beast is directly related to the talent of its owner. A beast lord with a talent of rank F requires no more than 1 stone when building a space. For S rank, it takes about 30. Since Bai Jian has a mythical level talent and he will need 200 or 300 pieces, he comes to the conclusion that this should be more than enough for the construction of space. The young man sits down on the Limbi stones and begins the process of repetition. The process begins and his eye opens. Then the first thing you get is a notification about the non-free service of the enlightenment of heaven. The notice states that the normal space for watching mythical beasts costs 333 Limbi stones. The improved space for watching mythical beasts costs 666 Limbi stones. And finally, the ideal space for watching mythical beasts costs 999 Limbi stones. Seeing such prices, the young man is surprised and immediately freezes on the spot. However, while he is in doubt, the eye itself tells him the right answer. At the moment, this ability works better than any encyclopedia. The mythical talent Eye of the Apocalypse may have many open functions that are just waiting to be discovered. But Bai Jian comes to the conclusion that it doesn't matter how many there will be. To begin with, he decides to build a space for the beast. He chooses the perfect space for the beast and thereby donates 999 Limbi stones to implement his idea. At this moment, his grandfather and father are drinking tea outdoors. Grandfather calms his father by telling him not to take everything to heart. He also says that Zai Owen's talent is unique and that therefore building a beast space takes up much more energy and resources than others. But suddenly his grandfather feels a certain aura of his grandson. Then he realizes that the construction of Zai Owen's space is finished. And at this very moment, Zai Owen wastes the entire supply of Linbai stones and through meditation begins to get into his space to observe the animals. Opening his eyes, he sees a beautiful valley in front of him, in which there are many plants and many snarling mountains. He is amazed at such beauty. Beauty considers his space absolutely incredible. Then the young man remembers that the textbook description of the first created space looks like this, a one-color space of about 10 square meters. He begins to compare this and his space, where there are mountains and rivers, and also its space can accommodate 1,000 animals. Looking up, he sees a scoreboard with a warning and a reminder. There are additional effects of the ideal space of the beast. To be more precise, the first space can shorten the pet's growth time, the second space can remove the negative effects of the pet, and the third in the space there is a certain probability of discovering the hidden talents of the pet. As a rule, there are usually no negative effects in spaces, except in special cases. In the Bai-Jian family, there are 3 additional heaven-defying effects in each space. In the beast world, as a rule, a spirit with more potential has a shorter growth cycle. Many beast lords did not live to see their beasts reveal their true selves. That is, at the moment when the beast penetrated into space, it was placed large and strong, but the owner was dead at that moment. In Bai-Jian space, beasts with great potential will grow much faster. Therefore, he comes to the conclusion that only by relying on the effect of space, he will be able to overcome the difficulties and become the youngest and most powerful beast lord in the history of his family and in general in the history of mankind as a whole. Space can remove negative effects. Bai-Jian is tempted to look at this effect and begins his reasoning. In battle, a pet can be taken under control, poisoned, frostbitten, and burned. In short, the beast is exposed to many dangers than its owner. Then his combat capability will be lost. However, if the owner places the beast in the observation space, then after a while he will get a completely healthy beast. And the third effect, the effect of revealing hidden talents, is the strongest, since the talent of a spiritual beast has been fixed since its birth, and only with its help of legendary supreme treasures can it be strengthened or changed. The space of Bai-Jian can reveal the hidden talents of animals. Besides, their number is not subject to limitation. Then the young man comes to the conclusion that the ideal space for observing animals, for which he spent 999 limbi stones, did not disappoint him, but on the contrary encouraged him. Bai-Jian thinks that in order to build something like this storage, and even in a family format, at least 1 billion is needed, and obviously not everyone can afford it. Fortunately, in this world, Bai-Jian has no money problems. After the process of creating space for the beast, it begins to gather and exit the storage. As soon as he opens the profitable door, he immediately sees his family in its entirety. They start hugging. His mother exclaims that her dear son has lost a lot of weight in the last week. Grandfather casually strokes his grandson's head, fidgeting with his hair, and his sister and father look at Bai-Jian with a smile. Immediately after their meeting, Bai-Jian sat down to eat. One by one, he is already eating almost a third plate of rice. The whole family looks at him with wide-open eyes. The young man slurps loudly and eats a decent plate of food. Finally, a little sated, he raises his head and makes a happy face. Seeing this, his mother puts him more supplements with the words that this is his favorite stewed pork. She tells him to eat more. At this moment, the guy remembers something. Putting pieces of stewed pork into his mouth one by one, he calls out to his grandfather. The man looks questioningly at his grandson. Then Bai-Jian announces in a rather calm tone that he built a space for the beast and spent 999 limbi stones on it. What was said does not fit into his grandfather's head, from which he is thrilled on the spot. His father reacts in a similar way, and his mom is already preparing to calm them both down. Then his father almost catches his heart. Wiping his face from sweat with a handkerchief, his grandfather finally says that fortunately, the Bai family is not in poverty and that otherwise they would not be able to afford to think about such an expense. Grandpa also says that he didn't think that a mutated S-rank talent would absorb so much energy and resources. After eating all the dishes offered in a row, Bai-Jian makes a satisfied face. Seeing this, his grandfather proclaims that a fish has recently spawned. He asks Bai-Jian if he wants to see her. Grandpa also says that if everything works out, then she can become his spiritual beast. A diamond-level grandfather beast, a red-eyed goldfish, immediately comes to Bai-Jian's mind. He immediately says if it's her by chance. However, he does not have time to finish the sentence, as here he begins to be drawn to empty his intestines. Covering his mouth with his hands, the guy informs the family that he has eaten a little too much and that he is starting to feel sick. After so much embarrassing incident, Grandpa and Bai-Jian go to the spirit beast egg storage. Bai-Jian has never been to such places before, so when he comes in, the young man's mouth opens wide from what he saw. Dozens of scientists and supervisors, even more wires and glass tubes appear before him in their perfect glory. And Bai Jingchun is not the first time in such places, so do not be particularly surprised by the situation. Passing by several scientists who are holding an egg in a glass tube in their hand, the young man notices that this is a goldfish that is subject to the water element. He can already see the egg's talent and skill. The most interesting thing is that there are a lot of such aquatic fish in the storage. The fact is that the Bai family is a family of aquatic pets with their own unique secrets of stable cultivation. There are also resources necessary for the growth of an aquatic pet. It follows from this that all the first spiritual animals in their family must necessarily be aquatic. The young man, with his mouth open, walks around the egg storage and greedily looks out for every last crumb. Bai Jian assumes that, relying on the resources of the Bai family, his own children will already have enough strength to gain a foothold in the ranks of the beast lords in the shortest possible time. And this storehouse of spiritual beast eggs was created especially for the Bai family. The lowest level of eggs in this vault here is primary silver. The best of them can reach the level of gold. However, Bai Jian believes that this level is not enough for his bar at all. On the contrary, the young man believes that since he is the heir of the family, then his spiritual beast should be the best. And at this moment, he and his grandfather come to a huge aquarium where there is a red-eyed goldfish of the diamond level. Beholding her, Bai Jian's eyes light up and he still considers her on duty. Meanwhile, his grandfather Bai Jingchun is still serene. Thanks to his talent, the young man sees detailed information about the fish. For example, that her skill is windbreak, water arrows and waves. Also, the presentation of the fish, an unusual talent. There is a possibility of intersection. However, Bai Jian wonders why his grandfather's pet has damage in its origins. Meanwhile, his grandfather informs his pet that Zioen has successfully awakened the talent of controlling animals. He also says that he hopes that his baby will be born soon. Bai Jian comes to the conclusion that he needs to check whether he can use his talent to restore the origin of the fish. Then the fish opens its arms and 2 small eggs are visible from it. Seeing this, Bai Jian is even more delighted and surprised, and his grandfather proclaims that they need to look at which of these 2 eggs suits Bai Jian more. Raising his eyes, Bai Jian looks at one egg in order to see its abilities, and then he sees that this egg belongs to the category of Supreme Amethyst. His talent, Royal Water Speed, a rush of water, a layer of foam and a water gun. And his idea looked like this. Born with a double talent, but due to high needs consumes a lot of energy, which can lead to life-threatening malnutrition. But Bai Jian was attracted not by the talent of the fish in the egg, but by his category of Supreme Amethyst and the fact that he was born with 2 talents. Therefore, among the descendants of red-eyed fish, such phenomena occur for the first time. He immediately tells his grandfather that he chooses the second egg. Bai Jingchun doesn't understand why he chose the second egg in a split second and started looking at the guy questioningly. Grandfather proclaims that his form is deformed and his color is dull, and his vitality is weak. He says that at first glance, this fetus has a birth defect. The man proclaims that perhaps he will be born into the world on his own. For these words, Bai Jingchun apologizes to the mother of the fetus and proclaims that all this is for the future of his grandson. Then Bai Jian replies that his intuition tells him that this is his ideal partner. And at this moment he thinks that perhaps there is no baby water beast in this world with more outstanding abilities than this one. His grandfather exclaims that since this is his intuition, he will not stop him. But first the man informs that he needs to ask permission from his mother. Bai Jian approaches the huge aquarium and asks his mother's permission about whether she will give the egg to him. Then his mother, without saying anything, spits a yellowish something similar to a cloth on the egg. At this moment, Bai Jingchun informs the guy that it is the scales of a red-eyed fish, and that it can enhance the spiritual power of water-type beasts. He also says that if a water beast inflicts this scale on itself, the effect of skills is enhanced by 10%. When Bai Jian is handed the coveted egg, he sees that the egg has the same scales covered all over the egg. Grandfather explains again that this is a gift from his mother and that in this way she increases his chances of survival, helps him to be born. Bai Jian picks up an egg and, looking at his mother, assures her that he will do everything possible to grow it. He takes it as his promise to his mother. When he gets home, Bai Jian immediately puts an egg in the aquarium. He proclaims that it is necessary for the scales to be connected. After that, the young man takes a couple of potions from the cabinet and begins to sort them carefully. Then he adds hard enveloping flowers, dragon whiskers, nutrient solution made from high-quality medicinal materials such as snow lotus seeds, lemongrass, purple orchid leaves, cave tree fruits, red haze fruits, blood crystal grass and others. Mixing all this, he adds all the potions at once, which causes bubbles to form in the water and the water itself begins to turbid. But the main thing is that all the potions reach the egg, after which a tiny-looking sprout called an egg begins to grow more and more. In the end, the egg begins to shine and then it happens. It flares up with a sinewy fire and the water begins to fill with bubbles more and more. After Bai Jian scattered the potions into the aquarium with the egg, it began to light up and gradually rise into the air. With his mouth wide open, he looked at it, waiting for it to be redeemed. He knew that the Eye of the Apocalypse technique made the egg perfect. Without waiting for the egg to be redeemed, Bai Jian himself lifted it into the air. After that, he tells the egg that they will sign a contract together. After creating a magical space and then placing the egg and himself in it, he signed a contract with the egg. Immediately after that, the egg began to crack and then it began to break a little from the inside. When it finally hatched, a white fish with blue eyes and fur came out of it. A month later, this newborn fish fought in the ring with a beast of the 5th rank. The fish took the beast with its teeth and began to gnaw the opponent's stomach. After that, she immediately knocked him to the ground when his grip loosened. Supervisors and medical workers immediately rushed to the ring to stop the fight and look at the wounds of the rival fish rodent. The opponent was knocked down and lying on the ground unconscious. 3 people from the staff approached him. One of them proclaims that he was beaten with 1 blow and that this is already too much. But when they look up, they see that the fish is still glaring at the ring with their presence. The staff immediately falls silent and is terrified on the spot. They take his rival away with them and decide not to catch his eye anymore. And the audience, who saw it all, on the contrary, is delighted with such a finale. They exclaim that the master's pet is cool, and that if a fish is able to defeat a 5th-rank beast almost immediately after birth, then it will have even greater prospects in further battles. The crowd is delighted and consider this fight something like fiction. Some even say that water-type spiritual beasts are no longer his rivals. However, with a high-level beast of another type, it would not be easy to have a fish. In any case, they as one believe that this fish is considered special. The fact is that after signing the contract, Bai Jian placed the pet in a space for raising animals. And soon the fish caused a random effect of space and awakened a new talent. And thanks to the power of the S-rank yin, he acquired the purple skill Deep Erosion. The qualification was also upgraded to Royal. The Kingdom of Beasts is divided into Worthless, Iron, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Diamond, Amethyst, Royal, Legendary, and Divine. Thus, there is a certain hierarchy, or, to put it another way, on tiptoe, the Animal Kingdom. The unfit are a class of beasts before they are born, divided into 9 levels. After maturation, they pass into the Iron class, and then, after some testing, you can find out their further development. Looking at his newborn fish, which is just 1, the young man remembers that they also need to work out in the fresh air. Bai Jian decides that this process is considered one of the most important. He calls the fish to him and putting it in his arms, calls Bai Jian and Bai Xiao. They immediately appear near him. The young man asks them to prepare for a trip to the city, to which the guard responds in the affirmative. There are 7,000 spider nests and 7 main cities in this world. A network of other smaller cities is formed around each of them. In this way, the gluttons of the whole world are built. The place Bai Jian is heading to is one of the 7 daughter towns of Balan City. This is the city of Candle Flame. There is a volcano in this city, which is inhabited by a kind of spider-like spiritual beast of the fiery element, which is called the Candle Flame Spider. He does not enter the higher realm. Therefore, Bai Jian decides that this is the perfect beast for training his water fish. Next, Bai Jian and Bai Xiao go to the airport in order to get to another city to fight a water fish and a candle flame spider. But as soon as they approach the registration stoic, they are immediately left by the cry of a young girl who calls the boys. Bai Jian recognizes him immediately. It turns out to be his old girlfriend Fen Kian. Enraged, she immediately asks him why he doesn't notice her. The young man thinks, does not turn around and proclaims that he and she have both awakened S-rank talent. This naturally suggests that they are almost on an equal level, which he informs her about. The girl begins to blush even more with rage and anger, and Bai Xiao begins to look at her with interest. But Fen Kian won't let up. She says that so far they are on the same level. But, according to her, Bai Jian left the Hall of Awakening, thereby showing disrespect to her. She furiously asks the guy if her qualifications are not enough for him to take her seriously. Fen Kian also reports that after he left the Hall of Awakening, she looked for him everywhere and even went home. However, according to her, he tirelessly avoids contact with her. Bai Jian begins to sweat and does not understand what to say to the angry young lady. Therefore, deciding not to take her words seriously, he rolls his eyes and decides to just leave. Fen Kian still does not give up and starts provoking him, insulting him and saying that he is the last loser, a traitor with whom she is dealing. The guy thinks that they don't make any sense, and yet without betraying them, he leaves without even looking at her. Having stopped insulting him, she catches up with him and asks him to listen to what she has to say in the near future. She understands that he still won't listen to her words, so she pulls out her hand and asks him not to leave. Her hand is immediately removed by Bai Xiao. With a serious tone, she asks Fen Kian to have at least some respect for herself and not run after the guy like a tail. The girl looks at the new guard Bai Jian in disbelief and immediately feels the aura of the Golden Lord of Beasts from her look and facial expression. She immediately pulls her hand away and starts blushing. Immediately she becomes uncomfortable. She still says that she wants to argue with him again. Fen Kian tells the guy that when school starts, let their animals get infected against each other. Bai Jian does not refuse and proclaims that let everything be at her behest. This ends their dialogue, and he goes to the train station and starts waiting for his train. At this moment, he thinks that Fen Kian is too aggressive and that if it wasn't for the friendship between their families, he would have given her a good hard time long ago. Next, the loudspeaker says that the train of the city of Candle Flame will now arrive at the station. The microphone also asks passengers traveling in this direction to walk along the white line on the platform and line up according to their car number. There is a very dangerous wilderness between the cities of Balan, where spiritual beasts are literally everywhere. With the exception of the hunters of the Royal Beast Squad, few dare to wander in these wild lands. But the need to move between cities has not disappeared anywhere, so special means for traveling in the wild have been created. They are like a spiritual snail beast with 1,000 blades. The case is solid, made of steel of incredible strength. The length of each car is 1.5 meters. Each wagon can be transformed into a separate wagon if necessary. The higher the level of the train, the stronger it is and, accordingly, the more expensive the ticket. Of course, since Bai Jian has no problems with money, he chooses the best, perfect car. The guy thought about a place on the train right away and immediately booked himself a good place. Bai Jian goes to the above line and passes to the flight attendant who is standing near the train. They punch his hand and look at his identity and see that Bai Jian has a second-class ticket. However, this is not the ticket he booked at all. He looks at the flight attendant in disbelief, and she asks him to return to the second-class carriage. Although Bai Jian is surprised and does not want to go to the second-class carriage, he still reluctantly goes there with his own feet. Arriving there as one of the very first passengers, he goes into his thoughts. Bai Jian recalls that in order to gain experience, he must live like an ordinary person and have more contact with the outside world. It will be even better if the young man finds friends or allows someone to deceive himself. He believes that cheating is the best teacher. Bai Jian remembers his bodyguards and wonders why his grandfather even decided that he needed the protection of these two. He remembers that this is not his first life, which he lives in the guise of different people. The young man understands that if necessary, he himself is not averse to deceiving someone around his finger. Other passengers begin to enter the car, which even more irritates Bai Jian. Anya, one student, admires the view from the window of the open view of the city of Balin. In a voice, she begins to praise the landscapes of the city. Behind her, a whole crowd of students from the Beast Academies of Kyonan, the daughter city of Balin, enter. Bai Jian hears one of the students say that he wouldn't have been able to afford the trip if it wasn't for their school, which covered almost all the ticket bills. The young man understands that their bar is very low compared to him. Students start talking about their everyday needs and other things. The students of this school seem to be discussing someone unfamiliar to Bai Jian, and therefore he does not really go into the details of their conversation. He only hears that the girls of this school are wondering why someone like her was allowed to go out with them at all. They all proclaim that she may be destined to be born a loser. It is heard that a certain student is being bullied for something. The girls don't even bother to keep their voices down. Bai Jian does not understand who they are talking about, and therefore does not pay much attention to them. However, they still annoy him. But the boys' students are talking about their animals. This conversation is much more interested in the guy. Students begin to compare their animals with each other and sort out the strongest, in their opinion. This makes Bai Jian laugh, because thanks to his ability, he sees that their beasts have quite mediocre and ordinary talents. Looking closely, the young man sees a student in front of him and sees that his beast is a turtle with a stone shell. As expected, she has a pretty ordinary talent, look, skill, and class. After 1 year of training their animals, they haven't changed that much, which by his standards is clearly not the best indicator. Ordinary animals, ordinary talents. With a malicious smile, Bai Jian thinks about where such pathetic mediocre students can get to such a golden-handed beast trainer like him. The guy notices the huge difference between him and the students of ordinary schools, and frankly speaking, he is pleased that he is head and shoulders above ordinary students. Bai Jian notices the distant gaze of the students of the Kyonan Beast Academies, which is directed at the girl sitting in front. The girl looks depressed and does not look anywhere except at her hands, where her animal is sitting. Thanks to her Eye of the Apocalypse ability, Bai Jian sees that this girl is the darling of fate, who has a mysterious S-rank talent that can hold other people's luck and use it. Next to this girl, another student of the same school passes by, who immediately stumbles next to her and almost falls on her. The student immediately gets up and starts accusing her of touching her. She threateningly proclaims, if something happens to her, she will have to take responsibility. The innocent girl sitting behind her seat immediately apologizes for nothing, to which, in response, there is an immediate cry that she should not talk to her. The student leaves, leaving the poor girl. Bai Jian, looking at her, thinks that S-rank talent belongs to the Mythical. Mythical, he is sure that, like her talent will turn the Hall of Awakening upside down. However, Bai Jian is worried about the question of why then such a talent disappears in such a small academy in the miserable town of Balin. He wonders why she was allowed to just miss out on such a talent. He decides to definitely deal with this issue. The train comes to the city of Candle Flame. Passengers are notified from the microphone that they have arrived at their destination. They are asked to take turns leaving the car in the order of the queue. Bai Jian immediately goes after that mysterious girl. He immediately calls Bai Xiao to him, and she immediately comes to him. Bai Jian shows that student and orders Bai Xiao to find out all the information about her. The first thought that comes to Bai Xiao's mind is that her master fell in love at first sight. She asks Bai Jian if this is really the case, for which she is immediately refused. Bai Jian proclaims that he did not have any such feelings. He says he just noticed something special about her. The young man exclaims that if he entices her to his side, Then in the future the strength of his family will increase significantly. After the volcano, a small town, where it is located in a valley with an ordinary lawn, many spiders of the flame of a candle of the 5th level begin to appear. One by one they come out of the trees. Suddenly, Bai Jian comes to this place and calls his white-haired pet. The fish does not come immediately, but only after Bai Jian is shown to the mountain of cobwebs. After the appearance of the fish, he immediately breaks out from the paws of the web with the help of his beast. This weekend they infuriate a crowd of spiders. The aquatic fish at this time is also wondering why such insignificant spiders dared to challenge her. The fish immediately breeds 5 spiders into shreds and immediately knocks them to the ground. Only small pieces remain of them. Bai Jian is delighted that his beast immediately dealt with 5 spiders of the 5th level in a matter of seconds, and they were much stronger than those they met on the training ground. Bai Jian thinks that under normal circumstances, the water pistol they used in battle would just leave a hole in their heads. He wonders why it should be completely blown up right away. Then the eye instantly shows Bai Jian the answer to his question. Water gun. The impact force may vary during use. Then the young man understands why it was necessary. He comes to the conclusion that in this case he needs to find someone stronger. Only the fight against spiritual beasts that are above you in level contributes to the growth and development of skills. Depending on the skill level, it is divided into beginning, attempt, small achievement, big achievement, achievements, and success. Bai Jian's fish now has 5 skills, and if he doesn't work hard, they will remain at the lowest level and the strength will be minimal. Bai Jian goes into his thoughts for a few minutes, where he takes the example of a sword master. A novice master can chop 1 bamboo stalk. You have been a master for many years of training, that the skill has reached perfection. With a wave of the sword you are able to split a mountain. And that's the difference in skill. The same skill in the hands of different spirit beasts can have different effects and power. The young man enters into these reflections for a couple of minutes and does not notice at all that there is danger in front of him. He gets back to work and starts the battle all over again. A few weeks later, Bai Jian and his fish are training again and again, fighting spiders. And this time they have progress in the level. When spiders of large reach press on the fish with their web, it uses a water pistol to get rid of its enemy in a flash. And by the way, it always works. In the last battle, when another spider wrapped its web around the fish, it violently broke out of the cocoon with the help of its water power, blocking his ability. Bai Jian sees that his fish's level has reached the 8th level, and she has also added a couple of new talents. Suddenly, after the fight, Bai Jian comes and informs that the information about the student that Bai Jian requested has been collected. It turns out to be a girl named Kyo Gubai. Her parents died in a car accident. There are no guardians. She has unusual abilities, such as mutual positions and mutual overcoming. So none of her relatives decided to take the girl to themselves. The girl considers it her duty to unlearn and awaken her talent, as she does not want her long-dead parents to remain in debt. In extreme cases, it will simply be sold to creditors. After entering college, many face troubles, big or small. The girl also experienced this from classmates or teachers. In truth, they had the warmest feelings for her. Bai Jian reports that, fortunately, she is a strong person and that failure did not break her. It turns out that in her free time, in addition to working part-time, the girl is looking for other options to repay debts. However, the places where she worked were often closed, which made it even harder for her. At this moment, Bai Jian thinks that her talent seems to attract not luck itself, but on the contrary, only trouble. The young man proclaims that the girl has a clean past and a brave heart, and that therefore it is good. He is interested in what happened on the day she awakened her talent. Bai Jian replies that Kyo Gubai was the last student to awaken her talent, and that when she passed through the equipment, she failed. She proclaims that at that time the staff had some difficulties, and they did not want to waste time on replacing the car and recertification, and therefore informed her that her talent belongs to the F rank. After hearing the information about her, Bai Jian sends Bai Jian to Kion Academy to sort out her debts, and then he asks to transfer Kyo Gubai to the Beast Academy of Balin City. He proclaims that Kyo Gubai is perfect for recruitment. Bai Jian's eyes immediately light up, and she comes to the conclusion that this is something other than just an assignment to pick up a poor girl for service. She answers in the affirmative to Bai Jian and thinks that, finally, spring has come on her mother's street. Payment of debts and transfer. And she perceived his school as courtship of a rich man and a manifestation of love. Blushing, she immediately prepared to leave. However, at this moment, she and Bai Jian hear a scream in front of them. Kyo Gubai herself resorts to them. A huge spider the size of a mountain comes running after her. Bai Jian is delighted that the girl herself came to his arms. He immediately releases his pet to help poor Kyo Gubai. The fish here releases a strong jet of water and directs it at the spider. The spider is immediately torn to shreds. Kyo Gubai looks in surprise at how the tiny fish managed to knock the huge spider to the ground. Deciding to leave the two alone, Bai Jian, under the pretext that her iron is not turned off, leaves. She herself does not really leave, just hides nearby so that nothing happens to her master. Immediately after her departure, Bai Jian approaches Kyo Gubai and offers her his helping hand to get up. He asks her about her condition. Embarrassed, the girl gets up by herself without the help of Bai Jian. She gets up and proclaims that she saw a young man on the train. Then Bai Jian introduces himself and, pointing his finger at the fish, proclaims that it is his beast. Then Kyo Gubai also introduces herself and thanks him for his help and for saving her. At this moment, he remembers that he killed the black spider with one blow. From this she deduces that he may be very strong. Next, Bai Jian asks her where the rest of her classmates are and why she ended up here. Kyo Gubai responds by saying that she fell behind them, and then met this spider. Bai Jian, with the help of her talent, sees that all her classmates have escaped from the mutant spider, while she has lagged behind them. Inspired and thinking a little, Bai Jian reaches out to the girl and asks her to take him to the spider, which at first scares the girl, and then she is embarrassed. Kyo Gubai replies to the guy that it is dangerous there and that perhaps an evil fate awaits him there. Bai Jian grabs the girl's hand again and tells her that he is strong enough to protect them. He intends to show it to the girl. Bai Jian thinks that if she takes them to the spider, then he can not only use the mutant spider to train his fish, but also demonstrate his strength to the girl. Enthusiastically, he thinks that if she sees how Bai Jian defeats the mutant spider, she will definitely be impressed and immediately offer her loyalty to him. These are about the thoughts that come to Bai Jian's mind. He takes Kyo Gubai's hand again and tells her to calm down and show him the way. Looking at all this from afar, Bai Xiao is shocked that he immediately grabs the girl by the hand. And when she sees him smirk, she gets goosebumps. Kyo Gubai leads the guy to a cave, where the ancestress spider's lair is approximately located. A huge spider is sitting and a crowd of other, smaller spiders is gathering near her. Bai Jian and Kyo Gubai begin to look around. Once again, thanks to his ability, the young man sees all the talents of the mutant spider. Spider race, spider leader. Her kingdom, elementary bronze. Talent, a lava candle body. Spider qualification, advanced level gold. Skill, spider web production and cutting, group candle lighting. Seeing this from afar, Bai Jian thinks it strange that the probability of mutation of low-ranked spiritual beasts is extremely low. He wonders where the spider then got a double talent. Bai Jian thinks that if such a small beast has a double talent, then it means that something valuable is probably stored in this cave. After a little thought, he comes to the conclusion that treasures are stored here. The young man calls his fish out of space and tells her to prepare for battle. Seeing this, the timid Kyo Gubai again proclaims that he cannot cope with him. She asks the guy not to fool around and not to leave a safe place. The guy calmly replies to her that everything will be fine. He asks her to just step back and watch the process. On the sidelines, turning to the fish, he announces in a serious tone that they will first start with a water shot in order to reduce the number of ordinary and small spiders. He does this so that no one interferes with him during a fight with a huge mutant spider beast. He points his finger at the spider leader. After that, he asks the fish to wait until their leader is left alone, and then use the flow of water to instantly tear him apart. After he gives the fish detailed instructions, it immediately rushes to the spiders and immediately attacks small spiders. This is naturally noticed by their leader. She sees that the fish has only the 8th rank and wonders how she dared to invade her domain. Next, the leader asks the small fellow spiders to unite and eat this fish alive. Then all the spiders attack the fish at once and then Bai Jian announces the command for the fish. He tells her to direct the water to where there are most small spiders. The fish understands the owner and immediately does what she is told. Seeing that her brothers are being sawed by some small fish, the spider leader is shocked. She proclaims that the fish has not even reached iron. She becomes enraged and immediately asks the fish about how she dared to kill her subordinate right in front of her eyes. She threatens the fish with death. A huge mountain of spiders is immediately sent to her and the leader himself also gets up from his seat. Then the fish is lost, but Bai Jian brings her to her senses. He tells her to use the royal speed again. He listens to the owner and does everything exactly as he says. Royal speed can significantly increase the speed of the fish. Besides, it has achieved great success in controlling it. Therefore, if you use the royal speed, then it will be as easy for the fish to avoid their attacks as water splashes. At the speed of light, the fish one by one begins to pull all the small spiders to shreds, and finally gets to their leader. She begins to threaten the fish with death again with a ferocious look. The fish at this moment begins to get in the way and instead of attacking freezes in place. Seeing this, Bai Jian shouts to the fish to ignore these provocations. Bai Jian also asks the fish to clear the field before a real battle unfolds in this place. The fish immediately regains consciousness and starts killing small spiders again. Mutants. A fish in a competition with spiders kills almost all small spiders, which enraged their leader. She proclaims that the vile smelly fish has killed all her comrades. Bai Jian sees that now their leader is furious enough to get up from his seat, fight with her fish. Then the leader gets up from his seat and directs a huge old fire web at the fish. This is molten silk, blue skill. A type of spider silk with a terrifyingly high temperature easily melts and cuts objects of various hardness. Seeing this, the fish hesitates again. This is noticed by Bai Jian and again asks to hit the spider on the paw with a stream of water. Huge balls of water immediately fly at the mutant spider. The spider begins to defend itself with its claws, but the water flows almost pierce this shield. Looking at this, Bai Jian notices that the force of water strokes is greater than before. The water system has a natural advantage over the water fish. Bai Jian thinks that if they continue at the same pace, they will win without words. However, he comes to the conclusion that everything is going too smoothly. Suddenly, the fish is annealed by a web that has stuck to a high point of the cave. Looking closely at this, Bai Jian notices that the cunning spider has made a trap with her fused web. Bai Jian notices that the fish is gradually getting sick. He thinks that even if the fish can easily avoid the attacks of the spider click, but it becomes more and more with each attack. Over time, it will cover almost the entire spider nest, and the movements of the fish will be severely limited. Bai Jian comes to the conclusion that this is just a trap to kill his fish faster. He immediately tells the fish to use the water to quickly corrode the web. He intends to end it faster. The fish immediately does what the owner tells it to do. With the help of her power, she creates huge waves, which one by one begin to eat the fallen web. Having gained the necessary momentum, the fish immediately directs the entire stream of water directly into the leader, the mutant spider, who remained the last spider in this cave. The mutant spider is immediately blown to shreds and nothing remains of it. As expected, they are victorious over the enemy. The fish immediately falls exhausted to the ground. Seeing this, Bai Jian immediately picks her up. But suddenly, in his hands, she starts to light up, and they get promoted to the 9th rank. The promotion is successful, which makes Bai Jian ecstatic. He comes to the conclusion that thanks to the experience gained, their goal was achieved. The fish still remains in a supine state. Then Bai Jian praises the fish and tells her to rest, since this fight was not easy for her. Bai, who was watching all this, finally comes out of cover and asks if the fish Bai Jian is okay. The young man, seeing her, is delighted and replies that everything is fine with his fish. He proclaims that if she rests, she will be as good as new. He calls the girl to look at their prey and walks towards the dead spider. As soon as he takes out a knife from his pocket and starts stabbing it into the monster, Bai immediately picks up the knife. With joy, she begins to open the monster's insides. It's worth noting that she had the highest score for anatomy at school, and that's why she behaves like this. The guy is of course shocked, but decides not to interfere with her pleasure. At this time, he thinks that perhaps the treasure that caused the spider to mutate must be in the cave. He decides to use the girl's talent to find him, but his thoughts are overtaken by Bai and then calls the guy. In her hand turns out to be some kind of shiny stone, which she stuck out of the inside of the mutant spider. She asks Bai Jian to take a look at it. Blogger talent Bai Jian immediately sees what it is, and this turns out to be the Awakening Stone, a divine stone containing the source of awakening. He also helps creatures awaken their talents. The young man realizes that even before he used the Eye of the Apocalypse, she had already discovered the main treasure of this cave. He comes to the conclusion that her talent will prove very useful in the treasure hunt. Bai Jian realizes that he has only seen two things that awaken talents before, and this, the Federation Stone and its space for the beast. With such thoughts, he looks closely at the stone he is holding in his hands. However, he decides not to talk about the value of the Bai stone. Instead, he says he doesn't know what it is either, and puts the stone in his pocket. He tells her that when he gets home, then he will ask the adults. The girl agrees without any problems. Sometimes there are moments in life when you become a witness to the skills of other people, to which it is even hard to believe. For example, someone can carry things on a bike in a cart that exceed the weight of the person 2 or 3 times. Or, for example, you see that someone can shoot a bow with their feet, and at the same time hits the target. In such cases, thoughts like how is this even possible? Or it's amazing how in general, you cannot admire it or something similar arise in your head. Our main character was the complete opposite of such people. No one noticed him, no matter what he did, and he was very tired of it. But one day, as it happens, in one room similar to a warehouse, he found an unusual book in a white binding and with a strange symbol of a network of patina painted in black and yellow stripes. His life has completely changed thanks to this book. The book was unusual. When he read it, then everything he read happened to him. He could write down his experience in a book, and anything would become a miracle. Our hero was a guy with dark blue short hair and the same color eyes, and he was chosen as the new author of the Book of Experience. The guy worked in a diner, although this place was a little hard for him, but nevertheless he liked this place. A beautiful young girl with red hair worked there. She cooked delicious food for elementary school students. In general, the cafe could receive a small income thanks to elementary school students, but of course the income was meager, which caused the cafe to suffer. And then one of the simple days, a guy with a short black hairstyle, as usual, was sleeping at one of the tables. By the way, the cafe itself was empty now. The red-haired girl slapped the sleeping guy on the back and said that he was drinking here again, and could not deny it, because she had just caught him red-handed. At this time, RGG Lee Jong-seok, a 19-year-old guy, was opening some paper, namely receipts for expenses and debts. Recently, their income has become quite small and only expenses and debts could be seen in the checks. Seeing this, Jung-seok thought that it would be best for him to join the army after school. Jung-seok prepared everything for a trip to the bookstore. But during the exit, a red-haired girl shouted at him that he was going to the bookstore again, and that sleeping guy said it was a bookstore. But the redhead snorted and replied that now was not the time to read books. The guy himself would never give up the idea of reading books, because this is one of the cheap pleasures. Walking down the street, where a fresh breeze was blowing and blowing his hair, he looked at his feet, thinking about his own. At that time, he met his classmates, namely a red-haired girl with the same eye color in a school uniform, a guy with yellow hair that shone like gold under the rays of the sun and combed back, a simple guy with brown hair, a plain girl with black hair and glasses, and a fat boy with a kind smile and black hair and black eyes. A red-haired girl saw Young Sok, immediately ran to him and said they were now heading to Sam to study English, and brown hair shouted that they wanted to eat somewhere after school. Young Sok said he was heading to the bookstore, and hearing his chestnut hair exclaimed in surprise that he couldn't believe that someone was continuing to go to the library. And the fat guy asked the guy why he keeps using books if he can use the internet and read all the books there. The yellow-haired one said not to touch the kid, because he was doing everything right, but for some reason he had a dissatisfied expression on his face. He and the others passed by while the redhead was saying goodbye to Young Sok, and then followed them. Young Sok was bad at a lot, and the only thing that pleased him was reading books in a bookstore. Entering it, he greeted an old man with glasses who was reading a newspaper, and he greeted him in response and said that the guy came early today. Young Sok asked if there were any new books, and the old man replied that they were inside. Let the guy sort them out in order. Young Sok went into the library and found bags of books. It was one of the most beautiful moments in his life. He didn't know what was inside, so when he opened this bag, he felt like he was opening some kind of treasure chest. But of course sometimes there is nothing new in the chest, and today it seems there was such a case. Although, after looking more closely, he found the book that we described at the beginning, white with a pattern of black and yellow cobweb. The guy took the book and seeing that he had no title opened it, but there was nothing inside. Everything was empty. But suddenly it lit up and there appeared an inscription asking him if he wanted to write his experience in the Book of Experience. Looking at the inscription in surprise, he wondered if he had any experience at all. Then, after thinking about it, he decided to write something in a book for the sake of experiment. And immediately there was an inscription saying that he had become the new owner of the Book of Experience. After Young Sok became the new author of the Book of Experiments, he wanted to test what the book is capable of. But to do this, he had to write his experience, and to write an experience, he had to remember something, and in general he didn't know what to write yet, so he decided to go to a secluded place. He had one such place, in the mountain, and now he was climbing it. There were a lot of thoughts, and also no one could interfere, not to mention that if you concentrate, you can also remember moments of your life here. Young Sok was wearing an orange hoodie and comfortable gray jeans, and carried a backpack on his back. Looking around for a place to sit down, he remembered the bright light that flashed after he wrote something on the book, as well as the inscription on the book that asked him if he wanted to write down his experience. Climbing the laid ladder up the mountain, he then passed the rocky terrain where the ladder ended, and then almost fell when the stone on which he stepped slipped. Screaming in pain and sliding down, he still did not lose himself and grabbed the first root from some tree sticking out of the ground. A little more and he would have flown into the cliff that appeared before his eyes. With a sigh of relief, he began to climb back up. Some time later, he finally reached the place where he had a view of the hills and mountains filled with greenery and life, as well as the city, which could be seen from here quite small. After looking at all this beauty for a few minutes, Young Sok sat down and opened his backpack and took out a book and a pen. Putting the book on the stone and opening the right page, he looked again at the inscription asking him if he wanted to write down his experience in the Book of Experience. After scrolling through this line in his head several times, he took a pen and wrote on the book the question of how to record the experience. The blank page lit up white, which surprised the guy, but then an explanation appeared in the place of the glow saying that when a guy writes down his experience, he turns into experience points. Of course, Young Sok became interested in what kind of experience points and how to use them, and therefore he wrote a question on the book, how he can use experience points. The book in response sent him a message that when he would record his actions, he would get points. Looking at the answer, Young Sok wondered if the book had other experienced owners. But then he wrote on the book that the experience he gets gives him the opportunity to do some things. In response, having received yes, he wrote down his question again, saying that all the experience that he gets affects him only positively. Of course, the book replied that yes. What kind of experience did Young Sok want to gain? Thinking about it, he remembered his coffee shop, where there are almost no people, except of course 2 employees. Then he asked writing in the book if the book has a recipe for tteokbokki. The book replied that he had the experience to work with food. Then the guy asked what about tteokbokki, and the book said that he didn't have that. And then another recording came out telling him to write down his wishes. The guy finally decided to try out the book and wrote about today's experience. Today he found a copy of this book in a bookstore and wrote down his experiences in it. The book for his record gave him 25 experience points. Seeing this, the guy exclaimed in surprise that it was too easy, and then raising his head and closing his eyes, he began to remember one of the cold days he had experienced. That day it was especially cold outside, because the guy put on a yellow jacket and scarf. On the way, he met a homeless man in light clothes and with a beer on his hand lying on the ground. The homeless man was snoring, but he was curled up like an embryo, probably because of the cold. The smell from him was terrible and Young-seok just couldn't help but cover his nose with his hand. Then after thinking about it, he decided to call 119, because if you fall asleep in this weather, you can freeze to death. The ambulance is most likely to dress up later than usual, because it was icy expensive, so the guy decided to give his jacket to a homeless man. The homeless man woke up and thanked him, and Young-seok told him that an ambulance would come soon, but in the meantime the man should cheer up. He also tied his scarf so that he wouldn't die for sure, deciding that this was a great experience. The guy wrote about it in his diary and received 25 experience points for it. The book said that these glasses were for the fact that he wrote his experience of saving a person. Smiling, Young-seok decided that he had figured out the basics and decided that this was just the beginning. He decided to write a more complicated story. He wrote about another incident recalling that day. It was another simple day and a huge truck was rushing on the road at all stages. When Young-seok turned around, he saw that an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Seeing the truck rushing straight towards the pedestrian and realizing that the old man was in danger, Young-seok screamed with all his might. A truck was racing on the road, and an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Young-seok shouted calling the old man Mr. and he just turned to look at the truck and then Young-seok jumped towards the old man and dragged him with him to the other side of the truck. They both fell to the ground, and the truck was able to brake only after a pedestrian had passed. The worried Young-seok then asked the old man in a green cap and the same color of sportswear if he was okay, and the old man, sweating all over, thanked the guy. Young-seok breathed a sigh of relief while the old man asked for his forgiveness. His hearing had deteriorated recently. Young-seok, smiling, asked the old man to look at the traffic light next time before crossing the road. After writing all this experience, the book wrote to him in response that he received 1,500 experience points for saving a life. Seeing that this time they gave less experience, Young-seok realized that even if this is a unique case, if the experience is similar, less experience points will be given. After thinking for a while, he looked at the pigeons sitting not far away. What kind of experience does he want to get? The galubas were walking just a couple of dozen centimeters away from him, and therefore, smiling, the guy took out the chocolate and broke it a little, crumbled it, and fell asleep in front of the birds. Looking at how peacefully these pigeons were eating chocolate crumbs, he began to recall a recent conversation with Rodney. When he returned from the library and went to his room, he heard voices in the corridor, coming from another room. He stopped and listened. One of the voices was saying that if things continued like this, they said they would take the mortgage payment for the house. The voice asked to sort it out, because working at such a pace they will only lose money, not earn. Besides, they still had to send their Young-seok to college. With this in mind, he first decided to save the restaurant. Getting up from his seat, he went home, and in the evening, when everyone fell asleep, he opened his book again in his desktop. Taking a pen in his hands, he wrote that he wanted to become a good cook. In response, they wrote to him that the basis of cooking is in taste. Salty, sweet, spicy, sour, and bitter, 5 types of taste. After that, the book asked him if he would use experience points, and the guy of course agreed and fell asleep. He woke up because of a scream telling him that he would be late. The voice told him that he had already prepared breakfast for him, so he should quickly go down and eat, and then go to school. Massaging his aching head, the guy wanted to get up, but suddenly an itchy pain seized his arm. Frowning and clenching his teeth, the guy looked at the experience book, where there were congratulations that he had earned 200 points of culinary experience. He got a super taste, he got a mordant, and he got a knife master. He felt after reading the book after his request. In his dream, he gained the experience of the chefs he had read about. Getting up from his seat, he went down and went to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and found there a container with tteokbokki sauce. After trying it, he sadly said that it was a failure. The black-haired man looked at him, not understanding what he was saying, and the guy himself thought that this had become the norm. The sauce had a very weak taste of sharpness and sweetness. He immediately took ketchup and mayonnaise and expertly added them to the sauce, and then began chopping radish, himself surprised at the skill of his hands. He cut as fast as they show in programs or films about chefs, and when he also began to thinly slice the sliced round radishes, he looked at what was happening with bulging eyes. Of course, the black-haired man was as surprised as he was. A girl with brown hair ran towards the kitchen after hearing a scream, and shouted at 2 guys, asking what they were doing with the sauce they wanted to sell. Young-seok gave a spoon to the girl and asked her to try it. After tasting the sauce, the girl looked at Young-seok in surprise, saying that it was amazing. While the girl and the black-haired guy were wondering about the delicious sauce, Young-seok said that he was going to school. At lunchtime, there were a huge number of children in front of the diner, shouting to be given spicy rice cakes. The black-haired guy and the brown-haired girl had a lot to do. In the evening of that day, these two, having counted the nails, happily said that they had earned $350. With such a bet, they could even get rich. The guy said it was a shame that they had so few ingredients, and the girl exclaimed that the spicy rice cakes were very good. Young Sok listened to his relatives with a satisfied face and thought that his culinary skills had reached a completely different level. It didn't make any sense at all. Putting his hand on the book, he thought about writing to him next. Maybe studying. Or acquaintance. Or is it better to train anyway? Which of these three will help him the most? Young Sok, asking if any learning experience was available, wrote about it in a book, and the book asked him what type of learning experience he wanted. And Jong Sok wrote it down, and immediately he wanted to sleep, and in a dream he found himself in some strange space. 5 shurikens were flying towards Jong Sok. The guy smoothly raised one hand up and one hand down, thought about manipulating the air, and a gust of wind pushed all 5 shurikens flying at him. Behind the shurikens appeared some people similar to the bandits of the time of Miru. And in general, Jong Sok himself was also dressed in clothes from the time of Miru. 2 bandits attacked the guy, and one of them, a black-haired bandit, swung his saber vertically, but Young Sok easily dodged the sword, and then with a blow of his hand to the center of the saber broke his blade on the floors. After that, a horizontal blow from another bandit, already with white hair and wearing a white cape, immediately followed, but Young Sok only bent down a little, dodging this blow, and during the ascent hit the bandit right in the jaw. After making a circle, the guy sent 2 bandits flying with a blow of his palm, and Young Sok himself wondered where he was. The boy was awakened from his sleep by his mother's voice calling him. She said he would be late for school, so he should hurry up. Young Sok himself was surprised and couldn't believe that it was all a dream. He had never seen such a vivid dream. He fell asleep reading a book. Looking at the book, it was written that in Chinese training sounds like kung fu, and then it was written that he mastered martial arts by helping Mudang group. It was the first time Young Sok heard about the fact that training is kung fu. Now he understood why he had that dream where he was doing kung fu. A voice shouted at him to go down faster. He died there or something, and Young Sok decided to take a shower and go down faster, otherwise he would still get from his parents. After the shower, he looked in the mirror and was surprised to notice that his body had become embossed. Why? He had 6 cubes, the muscles bulged very harmoniously. Was it because of dreams? When he dreamed that he became a chef, then his culinary abilities improved, and after a dream where he was a student, his body also changed. Young Sok wondered if he should sleep in order to gain experience. But then after thinking a little, he decided that he gets experience by reading a book, and in order to adapt to what he read, he needs sleep. Going to school, he thought about the Book of Experience, which gave him answers to his questions about experience. But no matter how much the guy asks, the book does not tell how to be his master. Manipulating the air in his dream was an ability of the Mudang group. Stopping and raising his hands, he asked himself, has he become stronger? There was a soda can lying on the road, and kicking it. The can flew up, and when it went down, Young Sok jumped and hit the can like a football. The jar flew twisted and fell right into the trash can, which was a few meters away from the guy. Seeing this, Young Sok involuntarily thought that he should try football. But at the same time, he felt someone behind him and quickly turned around and dodged, causing the guy who attacked him to fall to the ground. Looking at the guy with black hair with a hint of brown, big eyes and a square jaw, Young Sok recognized him as Young. Young stood up in anger, saying that he was in pain and that his nose was bleeding. Then he turned towards the guy and asked him in a rage why he dodged him. Young Sok, smiling stupidly, asked in response if Young had attacked him first. Young, wiping the blood with his hand, said that Young Sok has good reflexes, but how could he dodge it? Young Sok himself was also wondering about it. Looks like he really got stronger. Lunch came, and with it the time for lunch. Someone at school shouted that it was finally lunchtime, and another said that he was sleeping all the time anyway. Young called Young Sok for lunch, and he told him to wait a minute, rummaged in his bag and took out 3 bottles. Pepper, salt and sugar. Young asked in bewilderment why he needed them, and Young Sok told him that he knew that their lunch was not very tasty. Young said that lunch seemed to be quite normal, and Young Sok, smiling, said that he also thought so. They went into the dining room, and Young, happily surprised, shouted that today they were serving stew of spicy pork and kimchi. Isn't that cool? Young Sok looked at the food and thought that he usually liked this food, but now, here only the pork had a normal taste, at least it was edible. And then looking at his thoughts, he thought that his perception of taste had changed a lot. Sighing, he thought that this lunch should not be as delicious as before, and now he understood it. When they were looking for a place, her friend called him to sit here. It was that brown-haired girl with pronounced emotions. Young agreed instead of the guy and called in Young Sok. Young Sok looked at the smiling girl with green eyes, and then at the irritated golden-haired guy, and sighed and sat down. Young, admiring the food, ate eating with both cheeks. The golden-haired man got up from his seat, and that girl with brown hair asked why he got up. And Sukal, that was the name of the golden-haired guy, said that he didn't want to eat. Young asked if he could give his portion to him, but Sukal said not to touch his food. Young Sok looked at the departing Sukal with bewilderment, and meanwhile, the green-eyed girl told him not to worry. Young Sok tasted the food and thought that, as expected, the food was not very good. Taking a little salt, he poured it on his hand and then began to crumble it, and then sprinkle it on the dish. Young asked him why he crushed the salt, and Young Sok said that it would have melted by itself, but the food would have cooled down during this time. Then Jong Seok sprinkled a little pepper. One of the guys, or rather a skinny guy from their company, asked him why he was spoiling the food, because lunch is so delicious. Another guy, a fat man, eating a lynx, said that quantity over quality. Young asked a friend to give him a taste, and when he ate the pork, he screamed with pleasure, saying that it was excellent. Because of his harsh cry, the others almost spat out food from behind their mouths. Young, getting up from his seat, shouted at Young Seok that he had added all the salt and pepper, but the taste had changed so much. Young Seok, calmly eating his food, said that if the food is not delicious, then it's about seasonings. All he did was increase the salinity and sharpness. Young asked in surprise that this was all he needed to change the taste. Young Seok said that the difference between pouring out a glass of water and not pouring out. Young asked what it was, and Young Seok smilingly said it was just 1 drop of water. Young still didn't understand, looked at his friend, and Young Seok said that all he did was add just 1 drop of flavor. And at this time, the green-eyed woman handed him a tray with her food, asking him to do the same for her. Near the school, Sukal met with Sunbi from the karate club. Som had a white uniform and a black belt, characteristic of this club. Song had a short cropped head and looked at his hube with doubt because Sukal asked him for something that he usually didn't want to do. Su Chol, sitting on a bench, looked up and asked his Somb if he understood what he was talking about. Somb was still doubtful, so the golden-haired man said that everything would be fine even if he refused. He was not going to force him. But these words did not calm Somb at all. At this time, a black-haired girl with glasses from their group called Sukal, running to him. The guy told his Somb that he could go and began to listen to the girl. The black-haired girl told him that Young Seok was driving everyone crazy because he was seasoning food in the cafeteria, and that made the food taste several degrees tastier. She also said that the first person he approached was Yoon Jai, that is, that green-eyed girl. Sukal, ignoring her words, asked what she came here for. The girl looked at him blankly, and the guy continued, saying that she should have enjoyed lunch with all of them. The girl stuttered a little, said she would like to eat with him, and the guy got up from his seat and asked why she thought he would have lunch with her. The girl said she just wanted to be with him. And the guy frowned and said that this is what makes him lose his appetite. The next lesson was physical education, and the guys were indignant about it. All due to the fact that in this school during physical education guys learned judo, and girls also basketball. They were controlled during judo. Their Somb, and the most creepy of them was Cho Hyun, a muscular guy with black hair pulled up. Now he was looking at Young Seok and remembering the words of his hube. Sukal asked him if he was going to an elite judo college. Then he told him that most likely he would not be able to get into such a college with the current skills. But Sukal could help him. His father was the college chairman Sunbi, and he was very respected. Of course, Cho Hyun couldn't remain indifferent after this, so he was going to do as Sukal said. He shouted at Young Seok Lee that he had the wrong stance. But the guy said that what was he talking about, because his stance was correct. Cho Hyun shouted at him to come out to him, and did not be impertinent. Young Seok, not understanding what was going on, came forward while the others were discussing this event. The whisper of course quickly reached the girls, and Yoon Jai also found out about it. Cho Hyun, looking at Young Seok, told him to get ready for sparring. Young, looking at this situation, thought that Young Seok would have a hard time. And Cho Hyun remembered his hube's request, or rather that Cho Hyun should destroy Young Seok so that he could not walk with his head up in school. Clicking, Cho Hyun grabbed the form of Jong Seok and said that he was not going to tolerate such a trifle as Jong Seok in his gym, and after making a grab threw him to the ground. Yoon Jai looked at it with excitement. Su Chol was grinning quite. But unfortunately, right before they collided with the ground, Young Seok twisted and hit his ankle on Som's head, exposing his back. Not his head, for one thing. Cho Hyun was surprised by this in earnest. How in general did this guy manage to turn his body around and fall on his back? Was it a random happy accident? While Cho Hyun was guessing, Young Seok himself got up, sat down and turned to him and said that it was not fair. Of course, Young Seok was supported by his classmates, saying that he was right and it wasn't fair, but one shout from Cho Hyun was enough to silence them all. Young Seok stood up and asked to fight him again, which made Cho Hyun frown, but his classmates spread the atmosphere saying that they should fight again. Cho Hyun didn't understand where this guy's confidence came from. Yoon Jai, hearing the guy's words, asked him not to do it, and Su Chol, seeing Yoon Jai's attitude, frowned harder. Of course, the other girls, seeing Yoon Jai's behavior, looked at her with incomprehension, asking her if she was worried about Young Seok. Hyun took a stand and said that he would accept the challenge, let the guy go to him. Young Seok, looking at the whole situation, found it strange because he did not feel that he would lose. Cho Hyun shouted that he would come for him, moved towards him with a jerk and grabbed him by the collar and wanted to carry him to the ground, which made Yoon Jai even more worried, and Sukal, who was expecting this, smiled. But Young Seok did not lose vigilance and with difficulty, but was able to grab Song by the collar and picking it up, he threw it right on the floor. Cho Hyun bumped his head and never got up. Of course, this surprised everyone and everyone started talking in disbelief at what had just happened, asking each other about what he had done. And the girls all broke out saying that Young Seok is cool. Yoon Jai was surprised, but Sukal was surprised, but at the same time angry. Young-sok himself, sighing with difficulty, thought that he had used air manipulation on an instinctive level. But Cho Hyun was surprised at his loss, and therefore he asked for another round. Young-sok wanted to continue, because he was sure that he would win, but then they were stopped by Sukal. Cho Hyun looked at the golden-haired guy with a pale face, and he told him again to stop. Sukal saw his son trembling from shock and barely standing. Of course he did not want Young-sok to win again, thereby showing that it was not luck, but his skills. It would have made the guy the star of the school. After school, when Yoon-jae was walking home, she saw Sukal, who seemed to be waiting for her. Sukal told her that he would like to talk to her, and Yoon-jae asked what he wanted to talk about. Sukal asked how she felt about him, and Yoon-jae, not understanding what was going on, said that of course they were just friends. Sukal said he wanted more, and the girl got into a stupor. The girl took a step back and told Suchol to stop joking like that. But the guy insisted that he was not joking and took a step forward and said that he did not want to interfere and wanted to see what would happen, but he did not like that Yoon-jae began to get closer to Young-sok. Yoon-jae said that both Sukal and Young-sok, her friends and both her classmates. So why does Sukal think so? Sukal, looking down, said that because he chose her and because she is his woman, and she can't communicate with others. He said the last part with pressure approaching the girl's face, which of course scared Yoon-jae, and she moved back and asked the golden-haired guy to stop being like that, because she might get angry. Sukal chuckled at her words, and this infuriated the girl, and she screamed at him, asking why she couldn't get mad at him. He thinks that since he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and considers himself a handsome, intelligent and serious schoolboy, then she will not be able to tell him anything. It's the other girls going crazy over him. Sukal asked her, what about her? She doesn't like him. And Yoon-jae said that she didn't like him. The girl with a serious face said that she didn't like his excessive possessiveness. He didn't even have a drop of attentiveness, which is why he made many girls cry. She has no desire to become his property. Having said that, she turned and began to walk, saying, finally, that she would not become one of them. Suchol chuckled to himself and thought that why would she leave, because he would never let the woman he chose leave him. Young-sok's mom was standing in the diner, and she saw Yoon-jae and called her over, saying what she was doing there. Judging by her uniform, she was from the same school as Young-sok. Bowing 90 degrees. The girl greeted the woman and said that she was a classmate of Young-sok, and in the end addressed her as a mother. Chuckling, Young-sok's mother asked why she called her mother, and Yoon-jae blushed deeply. Seeing this, the woman laughed and said that although it doesn't sound bad. The woman's husband, grinning, approached his wife and said that their son didn't look like him. The woman screamed at her husband and told him to go peel potatoes. Yoon-jae also asked if Young-sok was at home, and the woman said that most likely Young-sok was in the library right now. The girl nodded regretfully, and the woman told her to go inside. Everything is exactly right. Young-sok should be coming soon, so she can wait for him eating rice cakes. At that time, Young-sok was actually in the library reading books, looking at the old books. He was surprised that there were such books here. The book he chose was the Diary of the Wang Family, Mottos and Sayings of the Wang Family. It was written there that the Diary of the Wang Family was written thanks to the sayings and mottos of the Wang family. And the book said that if someone is in a higher position, then he should look after those who are below him, and those who are in a low position should focus only on the goal. The post did not create a person, but a person created a place. Those who changed because of the change of rank, such people are called small-hearted people. On the other hand, those who do their work honestly, no matter how hard or easy it is, are called noble people. Goals can be achieved not only in one way, but at least 10. And so he was reading this book, and suddenly a librarian passing by asked him if he understood what was written there. The guy, not understanding, tilted his head and said yes questioningly. The old man said that he meant that the book in the young man's hand was written in Chinese. Surprised by this discovery, he involuntarily shouted that it was because of the Book of Experience. And the old man, not understanding, asked what he was talking about, and he said that nothing. And then he looked at the book again. He could easily read this Diary of the Wang Family. He understood not only the symbols, but also the meaning of what he read. It looks like this is a learning experience from Mahou. For him, reading Chinese characters should be easier than ever. Thanks to his experience in Chinese, and can read Chinese characters fluently. If he can read and write Chinese, doesn't that mean he can also speak it? He tried to think in Chinese about the words he could say in English, but a minute has passed and he still can't come up with anything concrete. It looks like he needs some kind of trigger to make it work. When he went into the diner, he saw Yoon-jae, who was washing tables in an apron. Surprised, he tilted his head and then looked at his parents. His mother immediately told him not to misunderstand. It was Yoon-jae herself who insisted that she wanted to help, and his father, smiling, said that they did not use her or something like that. Young-sok looked at his girlfriend and asked what she was doing here, if she wanted rice cakes. Yoon-jae, embarrassed, said she'd better go and thank the guy's parents for letting her stay here. Those smiling told her to be careful on the way home, and that she was careful. When the girl came out of the door, Young-sok, without understanding, asked why she was here, and his father told him that the guy was an idiot. He seriously thought that she had come here to eat spicy rice smitten. The guy, still not understanding, looked at his father and he, irritated by the stupidity of his son, shouted that it was because of him that she came. The guy, still not catching up, asked why. Her father said it was because she liked Young-sok. His son should be more attentive to the feelings of women. Then the father added, approaching the guy, that personality should be more important than appearance, and Young-sok should always remember this. Having lowered a stingy man's tear, the guy's father said that he fell in love with his mother's face, and that's what it led to. Because of his words, the father immediately got a frying pan in his face, and the guy's mother shouted at him so that if he wants to teach him, then let him teach him correctly. Hyun-jae, walking home at sunset, was still embarrassed, thinking that in the end she didn't say anything, but even so, she felt happy. At night, in his room, Young-sok thought about the improvements that had happened to him. He had already seen the effect of physical improvement, but he could not understand what scientific analysis gives. Sitting at the table, he looked at the book of experience and remembered today, especially the time of the lesson, and analyzing with the previous days, he still came to the conclusion that nothing had changed. At least he didn't see any difference. It seems that complex topics also did not become easier for him. If physical improvements affected his body, then scientific analysis must have had some effect on his learning abilities. It seems to be the same as physical improvement. Super Taste and Knife Master is one of the types of experience he received, but if compared with games, then maybe it's similar with passive skills. The results from the Super Taste and the Master of the Knife were obvious, because on the same day his taste buds sharpened, and the use of the knife reached a completely new level. But as for scientific analysis, he could not understand what it was intended for. Fumbling in his backpack, he took out one of the notebooks and wondered how to activate this effect from scientific analysis. Opening the notebook, he told himself that maybe if he heard something, he would be able to learn it the first time. But suddenly something dawned in his head when he looked at a mathematical problem that had more letters than numbers. He immediately began to solve it, and after a couple of minutes he succeeded. Looking at the answers to the task with surprise, he did not believe that he could really solve it. At first glance, it was clear that this was a difficult task, but somehow he was able to solve it. Maybe this is just the action of his skill. Exactly. Scientific analysis allows him to analyze and understand what he taught and not forget it. Inspired by his discovery, he began to write down one of the tasks that he had recently solved, but after scratching his head, he sighed. He couldn't solve this problem. Why is that? Maybe it's because he didn't pass the topic. It turns out it won't work with topics he hasn't studied before. After opening the book, he began to read, but quickly realized that reading does not mean that he will fully understand the topic he has read. Therefore, Young-sok decided to focus on repeating those from the very beginning. All the rules and examples that the teacher gives from the book. If he studies it, doesn't it mean that he can become the best student in school? Some time passed, and then, tired, Young-sok stretched. He was interested to see the reaction of his parents when he becomes the best student of the school. He was surprised that he studied so hard and diligently. Who would have known that studying can be interesting, especially when you understand everything the first time? He gratefully looked at the book of experiments and decided to write something. Opening it, he wrote down about the experience gained during lunch, about the experience of seasoning food for girls, also the experience gained during a judo lesson, and finally the case when Yoon-jae came to their restaurant. The book gave him 25 points for the usual judo experience, as well as another 25 points for the dating experience. Looking at the last line, he was confused, because it wasn't a date at all. Suddenly he remembered about the diary of the Wang family and decided to search for it on the internet via a smartphone. But there was no information about this book. This surprised the guy, because he thought it was a famous book. But it looks like he was wrong. Then he wondered what would happen if he wrote about the fact that he took the Wang family diary from the library and now he can read Chinese characters. The experience book gave him 2,500 experience points, saying that he wrote about the experience of finding the diary of the noble Wang family. Surprised by the figure, he could not believe that the record about finding some kind of diary is comparable to the experience of saving a person. But how did he get 2,500 points just for finding the diary of the noble Wang family? Taking this book out of his backpack, he looked at its cover. Diary of the noble Wang family. Maybe it's because he thought that everything that was written there were good and right things. Although, why does he think so? At first, Young-sok didn't know about Chinese characters, so what right did he have to judge what was written there? Shaking his head, he decided not to bother his head with it and went to bed. The very next morning he went to school. When he passed the girls in the hallway, they couldn't take their eyes off Young-sok. The girls wondered how this guy became so attractive in one day. He looked completely different than before. Some even asked their friends if it was worth flirting with Young-sok, but their friends grinned at them, saying that how could they do that after recently calling this guy a loser. Without listening to all this, the guy went into the classroom as there was a bang and confetti flew over his head. Young greeted him with smiles from ear to ear, and Young-sok asked what was going on here, and his friend, smiling, told him not to talk like Young-sok didn't notice how the girls were staring at him when he came into class. After defeating the leader of the judo club, Cho Hyun, Young-sok's rating rose to heroic. Young-sok wanted to justify himself by saying that it was an accident, but Young did not let him rush to hug him and shouting that he was glad that Young Sok was his bro. At this time, a voice came from behind them, telling them to stop talking, and the angry Young turned around and shouted about who said it. He saw Suchol studying, and he indifferently told him that he was studying, and they were interfering with him. Young wanted to justify himself, but the golden-haired man just once again told him to shut up. Young cursed inwardly, and Young Sok looked at Suchol. The next couple was Izo. And as always, the students were not happy about this, saying that Izo should be taught to elementary classes, not them. Someone asked the whining guy if he wasn't just glad that they weren't studying anymore. That guy said he just didn't want to get his hands dirty, because then he would have to wash them. The teacher, with short hair styled to the right and glasses, asked everyone to calm down and asked if everyone had brought their things. Everyone said yes, and the teacher asked them to draw any plant. Young Sok thought about how to draw him. And after a while, when the teacher was passing by the students checking how they were coping, he saw that the guy had drawn something, and also signed it with Chinese characters. The surprised teacher watched Young Sok draw something in a relaxed manner. Enlightenment of bamboo and its stem. It was said that the refinement of bamboo is the initiated disciple, and the bamboo stalk is the disciple's mind. The teacher, seeing this beauty, was sure that the drawing of the tree was also magnificent, but the most amazing thing was that he did not use a candle for writing. Unable to resist, he said that it was an outstanding calligraphy and asked Young Sok where he learned it. The guy, raising his head and looking at the teacher, said that he learned from the book. The teacher, surprised by this, looked at the brush lying next to the calligraphy canvas and asked Young Sok if he had painted only with this, and he answered in the affirmative. This surprised the teacher even more, because Young Sok was able to write such a thing only with an ordinary brush. He could not miss such a talent, so he asked him to come to the Izo class after lunch. Not understanding why he did this, the guy asked again what he needed in the class of Izo, and the teacher confirmed it, saying that he should definitely come. At recess, while Young and Young Sok were walking to the dining room, Young asked a friend why he was called to the Izo office. Maybe he drew something depraved. Young Sok said that this was not the case, and Young looked at the drawing and asked what it was, himself suggesting that it looked like a thermos. Young Sok wanted to answer, but as soon as they entered the dining room, girls ran towards the guy with trays in their hands, asking him to season their food. They almost crushed the guys, which is why Young blocked their way and asked them to line up in one line. Young Sok regretfully said that he's not a cook. How can he spice up their food every time? The surprised girls told him that he was just running away, and the guy just apologized and walked past them and approached Yoonjae, beckoning her. Yoonjae turned to him a little embarrassed, and the guy took out a thermos and opened it, told her to try it. There were spicy rice cakes inside the thermos, and the girl was surprised by them. And the guy said that the taste would change if they cooled down, so he brought them in a thermos. The girl said that he was not obliged, and the guy said that yesterday she only helped, he was not well so he cooked it. Seeing this, the other girls screamed, saying that Yoonjae was at Young Sok's house, and they thought she was quiet. Young, seeing this as an opportunity, said that he could spice up their food with them, and the girls looked at him and thought about replacing him, but when they saw him, they immediately shouted at him to shut up. Young Sok asked Yoonjae to try a piece, and the girl, still confused, tried it and her eyes sparkled. At another table sat three who were always in the same company with Suchol. That is, a black-haired, bespectacled girl, a chubby guy, and a skinny guy with his hair up. The girl with glasses screamed that she knew that this bastard would make his move sooner or later. The skinny guy said that there was nothing unusual about it and they seemed to look good together. And the other said only that he wanted to try his spicy rice cakes. The bespectacled woman screamed at him, telling him to just keep eating his food. The skinny guy looked around, curiously asked if they knew where Suchol had gone, and the bespectacled one turned around and said that Suchol didn't want to see all this, so he didn't come. The chubby one asked curiously if Suchol had given up on Yoonjae, and the skinny guy, smiling, said that this could not be. They all knew Suchol. He couldn't stand it when someone took something that belonged to him. At that time, the director and the calligraphy teacher were sitting in the principal's office. The teacher, putting the canvas on the table, told the director to look at it. The director, curiously opening the canvas, asked what it was, and finding there the calligraphy of Young Sok, said in surprise that it was a masterpiece and that it was an outstanding calligraphy. The teacher asked if such an expert as the director sees this as an outstanding calligraphy. The director said that how can he call himself a professional if he only took a couple of calligraphy lessons from his grandfather. After looking more closely, the director said that it didn't look like printer ink and that it looked like it had been written recently. The principal asked if the teacher himself had written it about. The teacher regretfully said that it was not him, but his student from the Izo class. The surprised director asked the teacher if he was sure that it was a student, and he replied that it was, and also that the student had drawn it with a simple brush. The director folded the calligraphy sheet and said that there was no reason not to meet a student with such outstanding calligraphy. Jong Sok himself was sitting in the Izo classroom right now and waiting for the teacher. The lesson was going to start soon, so he was impatient. And then the director and the calligraphy teacher came in. The guy hurriedly got up from his seat and made a bow greeting the director and the teacher. The director asked the guy with a smile that he was Lee Jong Sok, and he replied that it was so. The director said that he had heard that the guy was a great calligrapher. The teacher, smiling at this time, added that the director saw the guy's work and highly appreciated him. Surprised, Young Seok asked in perplexity with what kind of work, and the teacher showed his calligraphy today. After that, the director asked him if he could show how he writes. The director asked the teacher if he had a pen and ink, and he said that he did and began to pouring it into a vessel for ink and wanted to grind it. But the director stopped him, saying that for calligraphy, the one who writes should rub ink. Then the director turned to the guy and asked him if it was time for him to start. The guy took a black stone for rubbing the ink and began to rub it. With surprise and new sensations, he looked at the stone, thinking that the ink felt somehow new. They had art lessons before, so he knew how to rub ink, but it was the first time he felt that it was so natural. Maybe it's also because of the study experience. He felt his mind become calm, and even as he rubbed the coarse ink into a soft goo. This did not escape the keen eye of the director, and he was surprised by such a level of concentration of the guy. The director remembered that as a child his grandfather had told him that writing calligraphy meant putting his feelings and emotions into it. It all starts with rubbing the ink. He must make sure that while rubbing the ink, he also invests his emotions. The director learned calligraphy from his grandfather, who took first place during the Joseon Dynasty state exams. Therefore, the director was proud that he had a deep knowledge of the art of calligraphy, but in order for him to become a master, he needed a master. At this time, Young Seok finished rubbing and asked what to write to him, and the director told him to write a phrase that the guy likes. The guy wondered if he should write a phrase from the diary of the Wang family. Since he remembered one of the phrases that was there, he decided to write it. The director calculated what was written. Understanding by ear, you can earn the trust of another by listening to him. Then he took the guy's sheet and began his analysis. The handwriting itself is bold and rich. At the same time, there were notes of elegance in it, plus free strokes, saying that it was fine. The director even compared this work with the work of Wang Moonjang. Hearing Wang Moonjang's name, the guy tilted his head, but before he could think, the director asked him who he studied with, and the guy said that he studied by reading books. This greatly surprised the director, and he asked again if the guy had never taken lessons from a teacher or other adults. And the guy nodded. The director looked at the sheet with satisfaction and said that it is very difficult to learn such a level of calligraphy only by yourself. It is very commendable. Then he handed over the money, saying that it was a payment for calligraphy. Surprised and a little scared, the guy said that no, he didn't need it. But the director began to insist, saying that this money was not from the teacher, but from someone who appreciates calligraphy and wants to thank his creator for such a masterpiece. Bowing, the guy accepted the money and thanked the director. The director smilingly said that it would be great if they continued to write calligraphy in the future. The bell rang, and therefore the director told him that he could go, because it looks like the lesson will start soon. The guy bowed 90 degrees and said yes and left. Reading the phrase, the director said that it was a great phrase. The teacher asked what it meant, and the principal said that it meant that one could earn the trust of another by listening carefully to him. When a person does not impose his judgments on another, he can listen and understand topics, ideas that a person likes, and on the basis of this continue the conversation or something else. After giving his smartphone to teacher O, the director asked him to take a picture of it together with the calligraphy, while he should focus the camera on the calligraphy, not on him. The teacher took a picture and apologized, left, saying that he also had a lesson. The director wrote in his chat to his friends that he wanted to share this beautiful work that he had recently received and sent a message along with a photo of calligraphy. And he looked again at the phrase written in it, thinking that the more he looks at it, the more it fascinates him. No sooner had he put the smartphone back in his pocket than it began to vibrate, and when he entered the chat, he saw how others were writing to him. One wrote that calligraphy has an amazing handwriting, and the second that this phrase is magnificent and very deep. The third asked the director where he got it from and also asked why there was no signature, because by this signature you can find out who wrote calligraphy. The fourth wrote that he would like to admire this calligraphy in person, so he asked everyone to get together. The director smiled, thinking that it looks like his friends are more interested than him. At this time, Young Seok, who was returning to class, was thinking about the name Wang Moonjang, which he heard from the principal. Maybe Wang Moonjang is the person who wrote the diary of the Wang family. Or maybe the author of the diary copied Wang Moonjang's handwriting. And is Wang Moonjang known to be as famous as Han Soon-bong? While asking these questions in his mind, Young Seok began to scour the internet for information. Wikipedia said that he was a politician of the Cheng dynasty and a great calligrapher, and his strokes and handwriting are concise and elegant. There wasn't much information, and Young Seok thought it was because he was Chinese. Young Seok decided to write a new query in the search engine and therefore wrote about the cost of Wang Moonjang's works. Nothing was found on his request. Tilting his head, the guy decided to find out about the cost of Han Sung-bong's work, and this time was shocked by the amount he saw. The cost of the book with the works of Han Sung-bong in total was $7 million. The next day, his parents saw him off, wishing him good luck and good grades for exams. The guy, smiling, thanked them and left. Surprisingly, this is the first time when he was waiting for the exams to begin. What kind of assessment does he get? And so in the classroom, everyone was focused on the tests. After receiving his piece of paper, Young Sok went through the tasks once and smiled because he had confidence that he could cope with everything. Mentally asking his mother to wait a little, because he would make her a nice gift, he began to do the test. The exam was over and everyone was very happy about it, shouting about it in the corridors. But some whined that tomorrow they would have to take exams again. And someone more optimistic said that there would be no lessons. Young Sok walked past these people with his hands in his pockets, and at that moment Yoon-jae appeared beside him and called him, asked how he wrote the exams. The guy, smiling, said that he thinks it turned out well. A cheerful voice rang out from behind, saying that probably Young Sok was looking through the test paper until his eyes burst, and another voice laughingly added that it was a pity, because the answers he had been staring at for so long were probably wrong. Turning around, Young Sok and Yoon-jae saw Sukal and his sixers in the form of a fat man and a skinny guy. The skinny guy, smiling all over his mouth, said that after all, the one who gets the best grade has already been determined. After all, it will be Mr. Best Student Kim Sukal. Sukal just looked at him indifferently, and the skinny guy continued, saying that Yoon-jae would be the second, but Young Sok, as always, would be somewhere in the middle of the list with average scores. The fat man standing on the other side of Sukal laughed and said that this is an immutable law. Sukal called Yoon-jae with a smile, but she turned around and took Young Sok by the hand and told him to go. The same one looked back in surprise, and then went forward. Of course, this scene made Soo-chul very angry. After leaving school, they were walking along the road when Yoon-jae asked the guy if they could go to the library together. They could study together for tomorrow's exams. The guy regretfully asked for forgiveness, saying that he would be preparing at home, and then the girl sadly tossed her head, but then embarrassed asked the guy if they could take a walk after the exams. Young Sok of course agreed, and the girl, delighted, turned to him and told him to swear. The violent reaction of her friend surprised the guy, but Yoon-jae, without even suspecting it, said goodbye to him, saying that they would see each other tomorrow, and left. In the staff room, which was typical, just like in any other Korean school. That is, the office was divided into places blocked by walls indicating the place of each teacher. Each place had 2 workstations equipped with tables and chairs, as well as a laptop. In one of these places, a teacher with glasses and a light beard was sitting at one of the desks and making some notes on one sheet. While he was studying, another teacher came up to him with a smile on his face and called him, saying Teacher Choi. The teacher turned around and said that he was listening to the math teacher, and he smiled and said that one of his students had received the highest grade in mathematics. The teacher smilingly said that it was probably Kim Soo-kal, because he is the best student in the class and always gets the highest grade. So this is not surprising. But another teacher said it wasn't him, and Teacher Choi, surprised, turned to the math teacher and asked, then who is it? The math teacher smilingly said that this time it wasn't Soo-chul who got the highest grade, but the next day in one of the school classrooms, where there were 3 writing boards, one large in the center and 2 others on either side of it, as well as a TV suspended from the ceiling on the left. There were students in the classroom, and their homeroom teacher appeared there, saying that today he would be the examiner. Young, surprised by this, asked that shouldn't subject teachers be the examiners at the exams, so why is it cool today? Teacher Choi sighed and told them to just accept it. Then he said about the rules. Cheating is prohibited. If students are caught, their work will not be counted. Young Sok looked at the exam sheet, thinking that English should be first today. After looking at the questions, he was sure that he could solve them, and therefore immediately bent down and began to do them. The teacher, passing between the desks, slowed down next to Young Sok and checked his test sheet. 3rd, 1st, 5th. Teacher Choi asked for answers from the English teacher in advance and learned them before coming here. So far all of Young Sok's answers were correct, but it shocked Teacher Choi. And now the exams are over again and the student rating has been hung up. And in this ranking, the first place was taken by Lee Jong-seok with 100 points in all subjects. The runner-up was Kim Soo-kal with 2 100 seconds, 2 98 seconds and 199 and a total score of 99. Kim Hana was 3rd with a total score of 97.5 and Nam Sang-dul was 4th with a total score of 92. Of course, this surprised everyone. Of course, it was surprising that Young Sok became the first, but everyone was more surprised that Soo-kal became the second. Soo-chul himself looked at it with barely restrained anger, but his henchman looked at it with shock. Young hugged his friend, saying that he knew that Young Sok could, because Young had spent so much effort on his training. Immediately, voices were heard saying that Young Woo was a jerk. How could he teach Young Sok if he took 5th place from the end of the list? Young Sok also congratulated Yoon-jae. Smiling, she said that it looks like Young Sok studied hard. Young Sok was smiling at her as someone pushed the girl away and appeared in front of Young Sok. It was Kim So-woo, the school's main bully. His head was shaved off like an army, and his look was villainous. Seo-woo himself was a little fit and pumped up, but now he was looking at Young Sok with an angry face, saying that he cheated. Kim So-woo, looking at the guy angrily, told him that Young Sok thinks he can be the best student of the school, or what? Approaching and poking him with his finger, Seo-woo told him that he had cheated. He ordered Young Sok to tell him how he had done so that Seo-woo could also pull this off. shaking off Wu's hand. Young Sok, with a frowning face, said that there was no secret or method here, and then told him to take his hand away. This angered the bully even more, and with a distorted face, he grinned and asked what Jong Sok had just hit him. And then he shouted that this kid seems to be does he think that once in the first place, then everything is allowed to him? Immediately there was a hubbub of people. One said that it looked like a fight was about to start, and the other asked if no one could stop them. Chubby said that don't they know Seo Wu's character? If someone interferes he will get two. Someone else said that if this continues, maybe Young Sok won't be able to walk home on his own. Yoon-jae looked at Young Sok with concern, and at that time Seo Wu grabbed him by the shirt and shouted that he was asking in a good way, while preparing a blow. At this time, Yoon-jae screamed loudly, but Seo Wu, sending his fist, was surprised to notice that Young Sok dodged. Young Sok slipped behind Seo Wu and hit him on the spine. Crouching with Wu did not believe in it, as well as others. Su-kal was especially surprised. Seo Wu, holding his side, could barely stand, but Young Sok, standing straight up, said that he had not cheated. Seo Wu called him a little bastard in a rage and went at him with his fist at the ready. Young Sok easily dodged and using inertia hit Seo Wu's leg, which caused him to collapse to the ground and hit his head and lost consciousness. After such a show, of course, the hubbub of people began. One said in disbelief that Young Sok really defeated this tyrant Kim So-woo, and the other said that it turns out that he defeated the judo captain was not an accident. Yoon-jae, not believing it, grabbed her mouth with her palm. Jong Sok approached the already awakened So-woo and told him that he had never cheated. Seo Wu, on the other hand, was looking at this guy, trembling all over and with fear in his eyes. Young Sok decided to leave and Young told them to wait for him and also left with him. Su-kal, looking at this scene in shock, thought about what was going on with this jerk. Looking at the sky, Young Sok thought about whether he should have answered a couple of questions wrong. He looked at his friend and asked him, does he also think that Young Sok cheated? Young said that he didn't say anything, and it's not that important. Now there is something more important than that. Young Sok, not understanding, tilted his head and Young grabbed him by the neck and shouted that he could help a friend cheat like that, but instead passed everything perfectly and left his friend behind. When he came home, Young Sok saw that the restaurant was already closed and, not believing it, went up to the house. When he came in, he said that he was at home and immediately his mother attacked him, shouting that he was her wonderful son. Hugging him, she said that she found out that he got the first place in the rating of the whole school and started kissing him on the cheeks. The surprised guy asked how they knew and the woman said that his homeroom teacher called them. He said that Young Sok got the first place and asked his mother and father to cook some delicious food for his son. Surprised by this, the guy asked that it was definitely his homeroom teacher and the father smilingly said yes, and it looks like the teacher was very proud of Young Sok. Young Sok asked looking at his parents that they didn't doubt him. The father asked why they should, and the guy said maybe he was cheating or something. The father, smiling, said to his son that he also went to school and he is sure that it is impossible to take the first place by cheating alone. Besides, the guy's father, smiling, said that he trusted him. Young Sok smiled back and said it was a simple and clear answer. Mom screamed that in honor of this, they would go today and eat whatever was delicious, and father said that let it be pork ribs. It was the first time in a long time that they got out somewhere to eat. The guy's expectations were high, but the food, to put it mildly, was not delicious. Because of the super taste, the pork ribs he loved were tasteless. However, Young Sok couldn't complain since his parents liked the dinner. It was a simple eatery with a meat roasting stove in the center of the table. Besides, the atmosphere of the place was pleasant. Also, Young Sok learned something new today. A person could eat food only for the sake of his taste, but who you eat it with is much more important than taste. Soon after the exams, the holidays began and this moment was awkward for the guy, because now it will be his first date. To do this, he got up early in the morning, went to the shower and began to wash at the same time thinking what he should do. He also noticed that he was washing for too long, washing his hair for the third time. Then he remembered Yoon-jae's face, and decided that even though it was strange, it wouldn't hurt him. Then he went on a date. First there was an amusement park where they had a good time. After that they went to lunch, where they had a good chat, and then went to the cinema, where they were embarrassed eating popcorn and cola, and then evening came and they visited a simple eatery. After tasting the lemon juice, the girl said that she seemed to be missing something. By the way, she was wearing an orange, cute striped jumper and a black skirt today. The guy himself was wearing a green jacket and also black trousers. Young Sok stretched out his hand and said, Yoon-jae, give him the juice, he will try to improve the taste a little. The girl smiled and said that she did not mean juice. Surprised, Young Sok asked then what she meant. The girl smilingly said that they did not hold hands today and it upset her a little. The guy was very embarrassed because of this and even blushed. And so they were walking under the pink cherry petals and the girl made an attempt to touch the palm of the guy and he did not push away and took it in response. Turning to the girl, their eyes met and they both blushed. At that moment, it seemed to Young Sok that the grasshoppers were chirping louder than usual. In a green area where grass grew and trees were more beautiful, the girl stood on her toes and reached out to the guy. The guy hugged her from behind and their lips met. Young Sok started to open his eyes and was shocked to see that he was kissing a pillow. Standing up in shock, he shouted why he had such dreams, because they only held hands. He looked at his smartphone, which seemed to have received a message. At the school at the principal's office, Young Sok knocked on the brown door and was told to come in from inside. Entering, he bowed and greeted. By the way, right now Young Sok was wearing a blue t-shirt and black jeans. Young Sok said that even though it's the holidays, but the principal is still coming to school. The director, who was sitting in his chair in a shirt, told him to sit down, and then pointed to the wall where the calligraphy was, saying that these were his works and he wanted Young Sok to appreciate him. Young Sok looked at them and said he thought they were great. The director asked the guy if he was busy now, and the guy asked curiously, what, did something happen? The director said that there would be a meeting of the MUNBA-NWU Literary Circle later and he would be happy if Young Sok would join them. Looking at the smiling director, Young Sok asked without understanding that he was sure. The director told the guy not to be scared. All the participants there want to meet with him. Then the guy agreed, smiling awkwardly. Then Young Sok looked up and asked if director Wang Moonjang knew. The director got up and going to the shelves, asked that the guy was interested in them because he said that their handwriting is similar. Going to the shelf with books, the director took one of them and said that Wang Moonjang was a famous scholar in Chang. He had short phrases, but at the same time they are elegant and beautiful. Handing the book to the guy, he added that this book contains several of his works. Taking the book, the guy noticed that it was a very old book and told the director about it. The director said that there are books that have recently been released, but when you read his works like this, they seem more significant. The guy looked at the title and the old man said that this was undoubtedly how to iron out Wang Moonjang's handwriting. Then he added that the guy took it and read it. Young Sok thanked him for that. The two of them went out into the corridor and Young Sok asked if Wang Moonjang was also known as Han Segbok. The director said that yes, of course, it was. Wang Moonjang was one of the best among all the calligraphers in Chang. Then the guy asked how much his work might cost. The director looked at the guy and said that it was not good to evaluate the importance of work with money, but he thought that several million won. Then the guy asked if the book was written by Moonjang himself. Then the director smiled and said that if it was something that Wang Moonjang himself had written, then it would be worth about 1 billion won. It shocked the guy, but the director said that since he is not so famous here, it would cost so much, but in China, it would cost more. And so Young Sok and the director were driving in his blue Audi. They stopped near a house that was made in the style of the Joseon times of Korea. The guy, seeing this splendor, asked if it was the director's house, but then grinned and said that with his current salary, this is impossible. This is a restaurant that they have chosen as a meeting place. When they went inside, they saw an alley with greenery, and Young Sok, surprised, asked what this restaurant was. They were led in the right direction and so they went into the right room and the director said that it looks like he came last. Inside, 2 men were sitting next to the dining table on one side and 2 more on the other. One man was bald and wearing a white kimono, the other in an office suit with black hair. The third person sitting parallel to them was with a half-bald head and a blue kimono, and another middle-aged man in a yellow kimono and with longer blonde hair. The director smiled and said that this guy is the one he was talking about, Mr. Lee Jong-sok. When he heard, Mr. Jong-sok thought to himself that he had aged a lot. Everyone got up from their seats and bowed to him, saying that they were pleased to meet him and thanked him for coming. Lee Jong-sok, surprised by this, immediately bowed 90 degrees greeting them. The director, smiling, told them not to strain so much. The one in the blue kimono smiled and said that how could they talk informally with such a wonderful calligrapher. The director turned to the guy with a smile, saying that he hadn't thought, and then added that he hoped that Master Lee Jong-sok would forgive him for being rude. The guy looking at this mess thought that if they continue like this, it will put pressure on him. Then the director pointed to the cookies, told him to eat it and wait a bit. The guy sat down and looked at the cookies in the center of the table and thought that they look appetizing. Taking one, he decided that he needed to see what it tasted like and to his surprise, it was very tasty. It was the first time the food seemed delicious to him after he got his super taste. The cookies were not too sweet and a little spicy, and the tea had a delicate taste, like the sweet aroma of flowers. The director suddenly hung up the calligraphy he had given him and almost spat out the tea. Why was she here? An old man in a blue kimono asked him if everything was fine with him and Young Sok said yes, everything was fine with him. At this time, a beautiful maid in the form of Joseon maids came inside. The color of the uniform was pink, and the skirts were burgundy. Young Sok said that everything is fine. He can finish this tea, but the maid took the cup and said she would bring another glass of tea. Seeing her, the guy opened his mouth in embarrassment, thinking about how cute this girl was. Looking confusedly at the girl, the guy thought that she was cuter than many stars, and when she looked at him slightly opening her eyes, he immediately turned away blushing. At this time, the old men were discussing Young Sok's calligraphy, saying that it looks much better than in the photo. One of them asked if he was referring to Wang Moonjang's calligraphy, and the director said that obviously the guy studied well. This surprised others. The guy himself sat awkwardly and looked at the calligraphy from here. The maid wished him a pleasant appetite and got up and left. The director asked the guy to write something and he agreed, because he already thought that coming here he would have to write. He asked what the director should write to him, and the director asked his colleagues if they had any suggestions. The one in the suit said that let it be loyalty and patriotism. The director, seeing this, smiled and said that the spirit of the salad had returned. Young-seok started drawing. To repay your country with loyalty. It was said that General Yu Fei's mother, who was a commander and scholar in the Southern Song dynasty, wrote this on his back. Loyalty is as sharp as a sword, patriotism is as serene as a lake. Loyalty is the soul of a warrior, and patriotism is the heart of a scientist. Looking at this, the old people could not help but be surprised, saying that this is a beautiful calligraphy. The director said that she was suitable for such a soldier as a man in a suit. He asked Jong-seok if he had a signature and Jong-seok said he didn't have one. Then, he pointed to the coal and told him to write his name there in Chinese. The director also said that it is the law to sign your work. And the guy wrote his name. The man in the suit happily took the paper and hung it next to the director's calligraphy, saying that he would feed them lunch. An old man in white asked if their lunch had not already been paid for. The director asked his colleagues if Mr. Lai's calligraphy was not beautiful. And everyone said they were pretty, no more. They were fascinated by his work. The one in the blue kimono handed the guy a business card saying that if Young-seok is ill or he needs an examination, he can come to the hospital where this old man works. The business card said that this old man was the president of Seoul Hospital, Kim Jo-kal. The man in the suit also handed him a business card and it was written there that this middle-aged man, advisor to the National Defense Institute, advisor to Call Ya. The guy, turning the business card, thought about what these places were for, when he suddenly saw that it said Lieutenant General of the Second Class. Of course it surprised him. Then he took the business card of the old man in white and the man in yellow. One was a former minister of the Ministry of Culture and Sports. Awkwardly looking at the director, he thought that this man had pretty good connections. The director, smiling, told everyone that it was time to eat. They were already waiting. The maids all set the table with dishes. Looking at all these wonderful dishes, Young-seok also realized one more thing. Taste is important, but you can't forget about the shape and aroma. The maid told him to eat and not be shy. There was a little bit of everything in the plates. It looked delicious, but there was very little. The maid smiled as if she guessed his thoughts and therefore said that they would bring food until he was full, so he could not worry and eat as much as he wanted. The guy nodded and asked, and lifted a piece of meat to his mouth. It was very tasty. Then he tried the beef and radish soup, which was very spicy and fragrant. And in the end, of course, the perilla leaves went, but they were not very pleased with the taste. Taking a napkin, he spat them out. The leaves had an unpleasant smell and taste. The maid apologized, took one of the plates with a leaf and went out to the kitchen. Yongsong's Pure Silver was a restaurant with a membership system, so there are not many customers here, and if a problem appears, it is immediately solved. The maid, going to the kitchen, found the cook there and said that the client from the chrysanthemum room spat out the leaves of the perilla while eating. The boss was surprised and therefore asked again if it was true, and the maid nodded. He tasted the leaves and asked if the customer liked the rest, and the maid said that the customer liked the rest, well, except for the perilla leaves.